order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. And if we would stand, and we have a student who will direct us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you all here this evening. The next order of business is the present to speak. And I hope you all know who's there. I'll be here all night. I just want to read the little item we have here. Speakers will be recognized by the chairman, chairman, and identify himself or herself by name and address, and proceed with his or her comments. All persons will be limited to 5 minutes. The total time allotted for a person to speak shall not exceed 20 minutes and is at the discretion of the board and may not address specific personal issues. And that's in the Board of Education policy that we have, 9325. And if you do speak, we will not respond. We will listen, put it in the minutes, and if it's an action item, we will take care of it at another meeting. Okay? The next order of business.
Just see if anybody wants to talk.
Oh, yeah. It's a really good one. Okay. We do have another place on the agenda where I can't think of something now. We'll speak later. Okay? Next order of business is the presentations. And we send the school highlights and also school-based health services.
So we have a few presentations from most of the students. We have a lot of students and staff here tonight. So Mr. Napoli, if you want to do the first one is the
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Center School has many successes tonight, and it's a very charitable school with many kind activities to learn tonight from some of our teams. In January, around the Super Bowl time, the kindergarten team did a donation or a drive, just like they did last year, where they collected food for those in need in the community in the area, and all the food was donated to the WIllington food pantry right here in this building. So they collected 381 items that were shared. There's a picture, thank you, Mr. Stevens. And they made it a little educational, where they were doing a lot of sorting and counting. So we don't have them here tonight, but kindergartners did a great job in their collection, and a great community event for the area. So thank you to the families that donated to that.
next group. Come on up, guys. Come on up. So they practice next to the screen. I was told. Perfect.
Good evening. The third graders have been studying Australia and learning about the bushfires happening there. We learned that this has been the worst fire season in Australia.
During the fires, over 1 billion animals have died, including kangaroos, wallabies, and koalas. For those animals who survived, their habitats have been ruined. Those fires have destroyed 16 million hectares in Australia.
Many people have had to evacuate their homes, and many homes have been burned down. We also learned that the fires have killed 28 people. Even people who don't live in the fire areas are impacted by these fires.
The smoke has traveled. This has caused poor air quality for people and animals to breathe. Many people were told to stay inside, and if they went outside, they were advised to wear masks. After learning about the fires, we wanted to help. We wanted to raise money to plant trees in Australia. These trees would be planted to help rebuild animals' habitats, communities, and help clean the air for people to breathe. Our original goal was to reach 300,000. To keep that goal in 1 day, we decided to increase our goal to $1,000. We will take our hearts to one flower in the cafeteria in the morning and also have an online donation. school put about 30 acres of trees in Australia. We want to thank our community for helping us to pass our goal, helping us rebuild Australia after the Dutch landslide.
Can you guys introduce yourselves and then we'll give you a round of applause? How's that sound? Can you just say your name?
Angie, Carson, River, Rice, Warren, Garland, and
And you guys are all, what grade? Third graders. And where are your teachers here? Can you introduce your teachers?
Miss Shine.
And Lauren, can you just say again what your goal was?
Our goal was to $300 and we beat that goal in one day. So
One day. So this group is super proud of, so congratulations.
All right, we have our look for the grid. Student leaders, come on up, please. So in mid-February, Center School, we were awarded a grant from the Connecticut Association of Schools. And this was a very much a student-led program, so I'm going to stop talking in about 10 seconds. But these great fourth graders, Ms. Spector, helped promote kindness and gratitude within the school community. And for 2 weeks, we had a campaign where we promoted a great deal of thoughts and happiness on little note cards. And Juliana's going to take over, and then each of our friends are going to, our fourth graders are going to share what they learned and what they really liked about the program.
Look for the good. A student campaign designed to bring kindness and gratitude to our school. Meet the team. This whole thing kicked off with an opening assembly where our student leader explained to everyone what the campaign was about. We shared what the gratitude spot is, how to give out the matter cards, and what the gratitude wall is about. Our student leaders led the school one day at a time, making morning announcements, leading morning meetings, collecting gratitude notes, hanging and counting our wall of gratitude, assisting with other students of kindness. Again, the gratitude wall before, the gratitude wall after.
Those are all Post-its.
This was a big job, from hanging the notes to counting. Any guesses on how many Post-it notes we had?
Make a guess, yeah. Do you know them?
907.
907.
Close. Yeah. 1,400. Close. Any more? 1,057. 1,473. At the end of our amazing 2-week journey, our whole community gathered to share what we were grateful for and to celebrate an amazing 2 weeks. Thank you so much for your continued support of our students and our staff and our school.
We'll start with Iris. She can introduce herself and tell her what she enjoyed about the program, what she learned.
My name is Iris, and I am a leader from Center Elementary School. I think this program really transformed our school community. you a grateful, kind, and loving one.
Hi, I'm Orion, and I think this gratitude campaign helped our school a lot, and I loved being a student leader. Hi, I'm Michaela, and I think Look for the Good inspired the school to be a good sport and have fun.
Hi, I'm Marion, and I thought that the Look for the Good project brought a lot of happiness to our school. I enjoyed watching people smile. I loved hearing the nice things that everyone has to say about each other.
Hi, I'm Juliana, and I was a student leader, and I think it made everyone more positive coming to school.
Hi, I'm Rylan, and I am the student leader for the Look for the Good project. The thing I like about the campaign is that it made everyone close. Hi, I'm Brennan. The Look for the Good project really boosts the gratitude in the school, and I suggest this to all school. Hi, I'm Christopher. I'm from Look for the Good, and I think this project inspires kids to be kind. Hi, my name is Lucas Anderson, and I was a student leader for the Look for the Good project. I like this project because I loved seeing all the young kids follow our lead and express gratitude around the school.
Where were you guys recognized?
What do you mean?
You were someplace special. Where were you recognized?
Your name.
No, that's next. You folks were recognized someplace special. Your picture was someplace, where was it? Did you know you made the news? They didn't even know. It was a news article about them. Was it Fox 61? You guys made the news and they didn't even know it. Good job. All right, we have one more special, if you guys can stand.
Oh, that's
There's one more. We have one more celebration for tonight for Center School.
So, thanks to Mr. Napoli, last year we were informed about the Connecticut Association of Schools Outstanding Arts Award for elementary schools. And so the elementary schools are invited to nominate students, a student who is in the highest grade at your school, to get elementary arts awards for students in recognition of their excellence that's achieved in the performing and the visual arts. And so last year and this year again, Alison Spector and I were both able to nominate students for this award. And this year our nominees and award recipients were Maren Farrar and Lucas Anderson. And so in February there was a nice award ceremony that was at Aquatroop, which everybody was invited with their families to go to. And so that was a nice night for kids from across the state to be honored for their participation. And we are really lucky to have these two students who actually could be, I mean, they're both in art and music. They're wonderfully talented. In fact, Lucas is one of our 3 students that'll be going to the elementary honors choir, which is in April. So, so he's got another thing coming as well. So we may be back to talk about that.
Congratulations, guys. So I know a lot of you are here for awards, and we'll give you 2 seconds to escape if you'd like. Feel free before we move on to our next presentation. If you have homework to do, we understand. But thanks to all of our kids for coming tonight. Take care, man. Have a good It's good to know where you work. We had like 3 meetings tonight, triple book, it was a little bad. I told you, you get 4 hours. So Mark is going to do it. She's passing Thanks for Ryan.
I have one of those right on my desk, and it's so nice to meet you. So that was amazing. I think we all feel really good. We see the students feel really good. They're feeling positive, and when they feel like that, they are ready to learn. So this is kind of a little bit of extenuation about that. We want to make sure our students are ready to learn. So you know that saying, it takes a community to raise a child? It certainly does. That's why we're all here today. So we have a lot of changing things in our society that we all deal with, our students deal with, and we as a community need to make sure that they are socially and emotionally able to learn and available to learn. So we currently provide counseling services in district. Our school psychologist, our school social worker, and our school counselor are seeing approximately 100 students right now for counseling services. And those services range many different topics and assistance, but really those services are there to make sure that those students are available to learn and can access the curriculum. We find that parents, families, and guardians would like to kind of continue those services into the community. And living in a rural, small area, it's sometimes hard to access those services. So we have collaborated with Jan and with Shannon. We learned about their program through community health centers, and we wanted to bring this information to the board tonight so you can hear about what they offer. We were excited to hear the presentation, and I hope that you'll feel the same way. So I will let you take it over.
Thank you so much. Well, those were tough acts to follow, I'll tell you that. But yes, I'm Jane Highland. I'm the Director of School-Based Health Services for the Community Health Center.
And I'm Shannon Henson. I'm a Program Manager for School-Based Services for this region.
So our services began back in 1993 in a little elementary school in the north end of Middletown. We're headquartered in Middletown, so we can walk from our headquarters over to McDonough Elementary. And that was a fully comprehensive location, so it continues to be, where they have medical, behavioral health, and mobile dental intermittently comes through during the year. So our mission is to promote and enhance the overall health of youth. I mean, sort of piggybacking on what you just heard. Our focus for a federally qualified health center like ourselves is the uninsured and underinsured. However, when we're talking about children and schools, it's really also to assure that they have access to comprehensive primary and preventive health care. So we always are invited to a school by a community. Never have I done cold calls or had any success with cold calls. So it generally is word of mouth, superintendent to superintendent, nurse to nurse, or sometimes my staff. Their child somewhere and they think that school could benefit from our services. Every child needs to have consent to be seen in school from their parents. So we have a consent form, an enrollment form that asks medical history and consent for FERPA and HIPAA to have some level of communication, and then consent for the child to be seen without the parent present. However, we do family work as well. And obviously we partner with school nurses and all the other providers and staff administrators within a school setting. We're accountable to you guys, so we follow sort of the guidelines of the Board of Ed, or if we're looking to do something, we'll ask the question whether or not this would be an appropriate service for you. Everybody that we hire is licensed, master-leveled clinical providers. So we have LPCs, licensed professional counselors, licensed clinical social workers, and then we're dependent on a community's request, and this is where it kind of comes in here for Wellington, is that we have, like the Cadillac model is certainly multidisciplinary, right? So we have nurse practitioners or medical providers, behavioral health clinicians, and then intermittent mobile dental. But most schools, most facilities cannot accommodate the space that would require comprehensive, and they base it on the need of the student population. So we've been talking specifically about behavioral health. you want to talk about that enrollment form?
Sure. So as Jane mentioned, to be seen with our services, parents have to fill out the enrollment form for their child, which gives us consent to see them in the schools. So we have enrollment forms online at sbhc1.com, so it's something you can go to now if you're curious what the form looks like. This is a great way for parents to enroll to if they're interested, because the form comes directly to us once they fill it out online. It's through a secure platform called DocuSign. It's something that a lot of hospitals and health centers use for consent documents like that. So like I said, you can go online and take a look. We do also have paper forms that we can have available so that, you know, if someone doesn't have access to internet or they're having a hard time with it, whatever the case, they can always fill out a paper form and bring that into the school.
So these are the services that we offer. Wellington, you guys would be primarily, you know, looking at that middle column there, behavioral health. So crisis intervention, for a child that's enrolled with us, we really are the first line 211. So instead of 211, we get called. And there are times when I get, you know, information from one of my clinicians that says, you know, the only visit I had today was with Susie, whoever, because she needed me to help de-escalate her for the day, rather than call 211. We do individual, we do group, and then we do family work, and then if there's a need for medication management, we will work to refer to a psychiatrist. We're also just starting to roll out mobile psychiatry or telehealth, which is really important in a rural area like this, so that we can have, you know, a psychiatrist, a pediatric psychiatrist, or a pediatric nurse practitioner in another location, be able to connect with the child, the social worker, and the family member via, again, a very secure platform. So more than the average healthcare, I mean, we do lots of stuff. So we really wrap around the child. We are there for kids that don't have insurance. We help them navigate insurance, their family, and you know, those are just some of the things that we would work with. Just some of our data. So we are where the kids are. So last year we reached over 19,000 students, and we provide care. That says 176. We're closer to 180 now. And that just shows you the different models that we offer. Obviously, you know, behavioral health is one again, because it just easily fits. It's an easy, just an office space in a school. These are the districts we serve. We really are spread. This corner of Connecticut is really our last, you know, corner that we're just starting to populate a little bit. That's just another look at it. So billing, it's always important to talk about the money side of things. So we see any child, regardless of their insurance status. We accept all state and commercial insurances, and there's no out-of-pocket fee for the family. So co-pays and deductibles are waived. We just receive whatever the insurance is reimbursing for the visit. And there's a flat fee if we went to mobile dental, if the child's uninsured. And then I talked a little bit about referral to access to care. So if a child's uninsured, then we would work with that family to help them navigate the insurance system to see whether or not, in fact, they could be eligible. This is just some of the research-based outcomes when you bring in services like this. You know, academically, reduces absenteeism, decreases discipline. I think Marcia touched on some of them, that there's much more focus within the classroom. I think one of the important things too is children get somewhat comfortable with the healthcare system. You know, they start to self-advocate for things they need. And then in communities, we reduce emergency room use, which means, you know, dollars are saved and Medicaid expenditures are saved. And so, I mean, it's got lots of, it's way more than that, but those are the biggies. So, healthy students make better learners. We are here to answer any of your questions.
I'm curious what your range of enrollment is within a school in terms of the percentage of all the students?
Sure.
Do most of the kids' families sign up?
Not for behavioral health. So for behavioral health, it really ends up being more of a referral. So the school and the school staff end up being a primary referral source. So we would market it. We would let families know that we're here because they're not the quiet child that maybe doesn't, you don't really know, or they're having the issues at home and not in school. But we rely a whole lot on the school staff to help identify the children that would be best for the kind of services that we offer.
You want to talk about what that would look like for us?
Yeah, for us, that would look like our counseling staff. They would be kind of the gateway to that referral. They would be working closely with whoever was the clinician in the behavioral health program and the families to kind of bridge that gap. Of course, families can self-refer, and I had the opportunity to talk with Stafford. Stafford has a very successful program, and at this point, they've been there for a while. They've done some really good outreach with families, and there's a lot of self-referrals and family referrals happening. So it wouldn't be the classroom teacher that would necessarily be making those referrals. It would be the counseling staff, and there would be a protocol kind of put in place for that.
You said you had mobile office too?
We have
downtown.
We have a mobile dental. We have mobile dental. So it's not like what you think of as a mobile van. It's not that. It's actually equipment that we wheel in, serve the children that have enrolled for dental, and then leave, come back as close to 6 months later as you can with a school calendar. And it's primarily hygiene.
In these schools where you're located, do you have an area where you work, an office? Or
Yes, so we have,
they
yep.
provide something like that?
Yep, we have dedicated space for the time we're there. Sometimes we share it with other school staff. We're there when that school member, or that school staff member is, at the other school. We might be there the days that they're at a different school. So sometimes we share space, but it needs to be dedicated while we're there.
What this program would require of Wellington Public Schools would be space, would be access to
Wi-Fi, a phone, lights, electricity. We bring in our own furnishings, our own equipment, our own computers. We're primarily paperless, so it doesn't take a lot of space. We work in small spaces. We like to run some groups, so if it can fit a few children too, that's good, but otherwise we can share space with the school for that.
Do you service the school every day, or is it by appointment?
That's a great question. I think we talked about sharing one clinician between the two schools. And then it is by appointment, and the clinicians know to work closely with teachers to make sure children are not always missing math or science, that there's some movement in when they come to visit. But it is, the children know, there's usually a pass system, or whatever system you use in your schools, so that the children have, and the teachers know that children are expected to.
So in all of those towns which you listed where you already have offices, are those offices all located in schools or somewhere? Do you have somewhere offices where they're just community?
Oh, yeah. So we have 17 federally qualified health center hubs, main sites.
Means it's just office somewhere in town, like town hall, room in town
Yeah,
hall.
so the closest here I think is probably Enfield, where they it's like a doctor's office. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have them in Stamford, in New London, in Meriden, Middletown, and everywhere in between.
Most of them are in our fixed sites though, so we're not in other community locations like a town hall, but we do have some hubs like schools that we work in, like domestic violence shelters or homeless shelters where we provide services.
So in those offices, like in Enfield you mentioned, do you admit children? Like would you admit children from Wellington? Anybody is allowed to come and visit those centers? So open for everybody?
Yeah, it's the same pretty much standard. You would become a patient of community health center. Students that were seen here at a school in Wellington would become patients of community health center. It doesn't mean that they couldn't still have their own primary care doctor or their own medical home. They could, but they would still be part of our patient group.
But for example, if you are not here, like today you are not here yet, children from our school system, are they eligible to go to Enfield office just by
Yes.
themselves?
Yes.
You want to talk about why, just being able to...
Yeah, this is really providing students and families with access, with better access. It's hard, Enfield's a distance. we're finding that families do struggle with, getting out to community supports for many different reasons. So this allows the families and the students to have better access to community-based services right here in district.
It's barrier-free, right? So there's no travel, there's no financial burden. The children are outside the door of the clinician. When you try to get to a community-based clinician, a lot of times there's months waiting list, and then children miss their appointments, so the continuity is not there, where when it's in school. We also are available for a minimum of 3 days over the summer for children that need that level of continuity over the summer. A lot of children, the stresses of school is behind them and they can kind of go on during the summer, but the clinicians work hard to identify the kids that really need to have that level of continuity over the summer.
Another piece that's important to address too is just the communication and the collaboration between community-based services and school-based services. Oftentimes, counselors are finding that it's very hard to collaborate or get in touch with community-based counselors. Parents are giving permission and encouraging for that, but it's challenging due to their schedule, school schedule. So this also allows for better communication, more collaboration between service providers, which, as we know, is going to just enhance the students' ability to, have more success.
How
Yes.
long are the appointments?
Excuse me?
How long are the appointments?
Generally 30 minutes.
And that was once a week, right?
Generally once a week.
Yeah.
Yep, and then often tapers down to every other. In the beginning, for some children who have high need, it might be twice, once individual, once group. But generally it's once a week.
Can you speak of any new sites that are opening up in this area?
Yes, I spoke to the Ashford Board of Ed. I heard from Brooklyn, is that? So we are starting to just get the word around up here.
And my question again, for example, you open up in Ashford,
Mhm.
will the children from WIllington be able to go there? No, when it's at school, it's kind of closed, it's
Well-
only community-based.
Yeah, and also because the security of a school, you want to
Yes.
make sure you know who's in and out. The only time we sometimes have done that is when there's physical, medical component, and kids in Ashford really needed to get physicals to be able to start school. We would talk to the superintendent and say, what do you think about some WIllington or some Ashford kids coming in just because they need physicals and you have a nurse practitioner here? Otherwise, we don't share the services between school districts.
How often would you be in Wellington? One person, one day?
It would generally be one person, and they would be here throughout the week, with half of the week at Center School and half at Hall.
The whole week, that's good.
Yeah, and then part of the contract is that we will grow to meet demand. And believe it or not, we tend to always be growing within even one school system. As the word gets out and, we become very integrated into the patterns of this school, so family members become very comfortable with us and the children become very comfortable with us. Drops a lot of the stigma around behavioral health services, and there's a lot of need.
So does a grant operate? Are you working on a grant or
No,
just
so the
insurance?
reimbursement from the insurance,
Just insurance,
we've
yeah.
just figured it out how to sustain ourselves. So
Excellent.
we have some Department of Public Health funding in some of our locations, far and few between. There's not a lot of dollars flowing this way, but I would say probably maybe 12, would you say, that have Department of Public Health funding?
Yeah.
So we're in 180 schools, so 12 of them might have some funding. The rest are sustainable.
And what happens when the child graduates?
That's
So
a
our
great
schools
question.
only go through
That's a
8th
great
grade,
question.
and high school is not an easy time, so what happens then?
So we actually have a specific process set up with our behavioral health clinicians to transition students when they're graduating that we start at age 17 now, I think. So even as they're becoming adults, how to then find services if they still need it. So as they're graduating, if they need to continue services, they won't be coming and seeing that clinician in the school, but the clinician will work with them to find where they can continue services.
Our school only goes through 8th grade.
Great.
So I'm talking about the 8th grader going into 9th grade.
I see,
What
okay.
happens to them?
So in that case, then they would be working with the families to help them find services, because again, if we're not in that school, we won't serve them in the school, but they would work with the families to make sure that they're continuing to get care, where they can.
And these students go to the regional high school,
Correct.
which is where we need to be next, obviously, just for that continuity. Then it's just a transition from, one level to the other. But I think what is important that Shannon was talking about is if and when we are in the high school, then we will still work with the child to help them. If they need to continue with adult services, we'll help them navigate that.
But for example, if when you are like in the office, like in Anfield, not connected with the schools, and you have children coming to you, so you can keep supporting them no matter which school they go to. High school, after
Yes.
school, so they can continue to come to you any age.
Absolutely, they can. They could go to Enfield. I think they would probably work, if the family is able to get to Enfield, then that's great. Then again, we're all part of Community Health Center, so it continues in that sense. But they would also work if Enfield is not realistic for them to get to, then they'll do what they can to help them find something here.
But if it is based on community, not in school district, then you have no limitation in age, in school attendance, you just take everything.
Yep. Sure, we see all ages, yep.
You want to talk about replacing special ed services and the inability to do that?
Oh, sure, yeah. This program, these services cannot replace required school-based counseling. So students who receive counseling through special ed on their IEP, through 504, or even for regular ed supports, that is still required of our district to provide. So this program cannot come in and supplant those services. This is an enhancement to those services. So I
It's
think-
not even really the same services.
No, it really isn't, no.
We work with all the students that get the Band-Aids. They might be seeing the school counselor, but it's not really an academic issue. It's probably impacting academics, but it's things that are going on around their life, basically.
How is a student referred? Do you refer?
The student would be referred through our counseling staff, our social worker, school
Do you have
psychologist.
something like a PBT or?
No, you just refer, yeah. We'll, we would come up with specific guidelines and procedures on that referral. So the counseling staff would have a good understanding of what type of student should be referred, that we would work in conjunction with the program. So it would be a smooth process.
Parental involvement in this.
If-
Students referred by, we have this group, but I haven't heard anything about parents involved.
Yeah, that's a key part, because if a student's going to be referred to the service, then the parent should be notified prior to that referral.
And involved. We do
Yeah.
family work. So if we can engage the family, the more the better.
Jake, can you just talk about that process? So Marcia's team makes a referral to the person that's on site. Can you walk us through those initial?
So actually,
steps?
Marcia will think, oh, this child would benefit. It's really going to be Marcia and her team that reach out to the family because of FERPA, right? We don't necessarily even know who that child is or want to have the phone number. That Marcia will ask, hey, here's this form, this would really benefit your child. The parent fills that out, that comes to us. Now we have the okay to reach out and set up a time. Every child that comes to us has an intake, which involves the parent, and then a treatment plan, which the parent has to sign. And then again, like I said, we want to engage the parents in the therapy as much as possible. So if they can't be here on site, the clinician oftentimes will reach out by phone just to keep the parent, abreast of what's going on.
So I said that because they can't see or talk to the child or the parent until they've signed it through Marcia.
Right.
She's the direct contact, or the counselor is the direct contact. Once a parent has agreed to that and is interested in those services, or even finding out about those services, that's when they would connect with this agency.
So if you had a teacher or a parent referral, that would also go through Marcia or one of the counselors, right?
Parent referrals can come directly to us, but generally we would probably still try to figure out what's going on with the child a little bit ahead of time so we're prepared. Teacher referrals would definitely go through.
In fact, confidentiality is so important that I know we've had a discussion too about how teachers shouldn't be collaborating with the clinician unless there was parent permission to do so.
Yeah, there's a separate release for that level of conversation.
Yeah.
And that would be in, not your policy, but in your administrative regs. And I would write that explicitly in there. Any questions?
I just want to kind of go back a little bit. The piece that, when I spoke to Stafford, I wanted to get a sense of how is this working in their community? And the one thing that I really liked was they've been there for quite a few years
Close to
now.
a decade at least.
And I asked, how do you get this information out? How do you make this comfortable for families? And they did a lot of work just being involved, being there at school functions, sending out information. No pressure, just to let families know that this is an option for you. There's many options, but this is one option for you. And to me, that was really a positive thing. And at this point, it sounds like they are a very active site with having a lot of student and family referrals. And really, this is kind of interwoven into their community now, which I thought was really a positive thing to hear.
Yeah, the staff that we have working in the schools work very closely with the school staff. So sometimes you'll find that, students don't even realize that we're not working for the school because it just comes part of everyday life here.
I think too, it's important to know that I think we have about a 90% retention rate with our team, so I'm not saying it never happens where staff, a clinician starts and then, they find something else or they decide it's not for them, but for the most part, our staff have been solid for a long time. I mean, they like what they're doing.
And most of the time our transitions are because the demand has grown. So
Yep.
instead of now being at both schools, they're moving to one school full-time and we're bringing in someone else.
Any other questions or comments at this time? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. First, that would be since he's here, he doesn't stay in the States, we can be ready, she said she's ready. Yeah, yeah. She's ready, she said.
What is that?
Yep.
Okay. Communications.
So, yeah, we just, there was a letter from Doug Roberts sharing his thoughts regarding the school building project. It was sent to the BOE, Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen. So I have that if you want to look at it. It was basically talking about, just the consideration of looking at crumbling foundations. And then had some ideas about grants for creating agriculture programs like UConn has. So just some ideas, so if you want to look at it.
Could you scan that and just mail it?
Yeah, sure,
Mail it to us,
definitely.
we all have it.
Yep, I can definitely do that.
Okay, that's all?
That's it.
Okay, I'll make a motion to move item 6C, which is the CES septic tank in Leach Field, right after communications, which is now.
I second it.
All those in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay.
So I'm just going to start, but give you some background. I sent you an email. As you're aware, we had an issue with Leach Field at Center School. We placed an emergency call out to Admiral Septic, and initially the septic was pumped on February 27th. Admiral, which is Dave Litland, who's here today, has done some emergency services for us and kind of systematically researching what is going on, trying to figure some things out. They've used a fiber optic camera, they've done some minor excavation, and so kind of noticed some of the issues. I'm going to highlight this, and then if Dave wants to chime in or if you have questions specifically for him, because it's his business and I've learned a great deal about septic tanks and leach fields. We have 14 leaching trenches, and there are 7 pipes that lead out to those trenches, and 3 of those pipes were blocked with debris, and he could not inspect them with a camera. We absolutely have to keep kind of determining what's going on and to fix the problem. We know we have several blocked leaching pipes. There's broken distribution boxes, and the main leaching field distribution box is severely deteriorating and collapsing. After I say that, he's hopeful that we are going to be able to rejuvenate our system. It's going to take some money to do that. If this work occurs, we're aiming for April vacation to minimize the disruption. We have had to pump our tank twice now. It was about a week apart, and we've pumped almost over 12,000 gallons in a short period of time. Where the hope is that if there can be some things that are corrected, that it will kind of revitalize our leach field and our system. But there are things that need to be put into place. Dave's been working with Eastern Highlands. He's talked to Holly through the health department, who is also an important part of this conversation. We have an estimated cost right now. I'll be nervous. I was worried that this was going to be astronomical, and I got the price today. I took a deep breath and I was okay. This is something I feel like that we can cover within our budget, which is good. This is a ballpark. This is in addition to what we've spent now. The estimate right now, depending on what we find and how things continue to go, is around $12,000. And that is to do a few things. One is to replace some of the baffles that are rotten, gone, dead, disappeared, not there, that need to be there. To continue assessing what's going on with some of the pieces. To replace some of the distribution boxes. The main distribution box is actually under the blacktop, and that needs to be removed and replaced. We need to jet the leaching field pipes, which basically forces water at a higher rate of speed through the pipes to kind of clear the system. Some of them are packed so tight you couldn't get his camera through. They should not be that way. And the reason why we ended up with some of the, what's the word you use?
Oh, previously high operating levels?
No, when it comes up through the grass, you use.
Oh, breakout.
Breakout. When we had the breakout, it was basically all of the fluid is going into one of the leach fields in particular. And so between the rainwater that we had, it just came up and you could smell it. The good thing was when they went and probed it, it wasn't coming back with like nasty septic, materials. It does need to be fixed. We're hoping that, we don't know how expensive the jetting will be. It's $150 per hour, depending on the jetting type that's used. But basically, and I do have talked to the fire department, they will bring in their tanker to allow us to, because you need a lot of water to do it. I will tell you, the kids have been absolutely enamored by this process. We have caution tape up around a huge section of the playground, and they have a very high-tech camera that when they scope, you can see the camera and the kids like, what's that? What are you doing? We had a group of probably 10 kids just sitting along the caution tape asking questions while they were working. So we do need to continue some of that camera work once it is we've done the jetting. So we're not out of the woods. I will say I have taken a deep breath from what could have potentially been a huge, huge, huge cost to we may be able to get out of the woods in a reasonable way here. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to share or you want to ask Dave.
Well, I'm a lot more positive on it now. They've gotten more information from the field side of it to be able to extend the life of the system. Some of the problems were developed actually just due to people not knowing, not driving heavy equipment and stuff over components that were never meant for it. Certain designs from that era were more prone to maintenance issues than they are now with some of the technology. So, you know, other than specific questions, I think we can bring back a lot of the life of the system. I think in the big picture, it was originally over-designed for the capacity of the school now, and that's giving us some benefits. You know, typical life on a system, 50 years, give or take. But this one seems to be, we can bring back quite a bit in life.
When you said that year, what year was it installed, do we know?
79.
Yeah, it was 70s.
It's about 4 years old.
So I have.
Don't hold that 50-year number on. We've got systems that are 75 years old and still going. It's all about maintenance.
Well, my question to you, is there even a slight chance that the playground area could be contaminated, even a little bit chance?
Well, first, there's a misnomer out there. There's a lot of things that are considered hazmats by the DEP. Septic is not one. So that being one issue, the issue of breakout, as long as you don't have it coming to the surface, that does not bring in the health district or other higher authorities. So it's really managing what you have now. The fact that the lowest trench was getting the vast majority of flow, you're talking, you know, a system that was designed with 7 trenches, intended to handle 5,000 gallons, 5,600 gallons per day, with one trench getting hit with 1,200 plus gallons a day. Yeah, it's beyond its original design intent. I mean, it's a lot like 60 sheets of drywall on top of your Honda. It was never meant to carry 60 sheets of drywall on your Honda. Same thing here with septic.
So my only concern is the safety of children. If we
Right.
just for the precaution, if we should check it and invite somebody specifically just to check the safety, so if there would not be no even chance for contaminated area.
Right, I mean,
Should we do that?
what we've been doing is been going and actually checking tank levels. That way there we know how quickly things are filling, also approximate flow rates. The big thing I look at right now, with weather always being a concern and school vacation you can't predict, I'm not sure if it'd be better to take on, say for example, the distribution box sooner, the main one, and that way at least taking level loading more of the field. I'm not sure. I mean, weather's a big concern and obviously school schedule is a big concern. But management on the downslope side into the playground area, you know, you can do visual observation. Sampling wise, it's really not as accurate. I mean, for us, we'd be out there probing, looking for groundwater levels, effluent levels in various probed holes. But half the system's under asphalt. So it's a difficult area to check.
One of the things we talked about too is potentially bringing in topsoil afterwards, and that was something that the health district talked about too.
Yep.
Was bringing in some topsoil afterwards just to spread, because one of the distribution boxes was literally an inch underground. I mean, we thought it was a rock, and so it was just, when we dump mulch out there, or we filled the sandbox with sand and the truck drives out there, no one had any idea that the leach field came over that far.
Are they supposed to be under blacktop? That was my question.
Well, no.
No.
I mean, I can design them such that they'll function efficiently under blacktop or other surfaces. They require, septic systems work best with oxygen. It's a denitrification process that occurs. The intent is 75 feet away, if you can dig a hole in the ground, the water is drinkable. I don't advise it anywhere, just digging holes in the ground and drinking water. But that's the intention of the process. With the soils in Connecticut, most viruses and bacteria will die off within 10 to 15 feet of a trench. So we've got very good soils for basically protecting groundwater. But when it becomes oxygen deprived, the process slows significantly for denitrification. You go essentially, you lose an order of magnitude where, you know, say you're processing the stuff in 10 hours. Under asphalt, it might become 100 hours. So that's why that part of the system is far less efficient. And that's also following along with what we're seeing for heavy sludge deposition and blockages. Losing the baffles on the tank didn't help at all. I mean, that's like your car losing the oil filter. But that's why I'm kind of impressed at the condition, considering how many things are wrong. You know?
And I hate to say this, but guess where the tank at Hall School is? When we're done with center school, there will be an investigation at Hall School. With the river right there, we have to make sure that things are operating the way they're supposed to be operating.
Yeah.
Is it feasible, once whatever has to be done is done, that some blacktop is not replaced so that it has the oxygen to do what it's supposed to do and people aren't driving over septic stuff that shouldn't be driven over? I mean, I don't know where it is, so I can't even.
Dead smack in the middle.
Yeah, and the thing was, we even feel the trenches may extend under the parking lot.
Onto the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I say, when we talked about potential huge costs,
Yeah.
this is, if all of that blacktop needs to come up in the sidewalk and it goes under the,
Yeah. There was
It's
no
gonna be big.
as-built done in that era, so we only have the original design drawings, and we've already found some discrepancy in what was originally spec'd versus what actually was put in. So there may be opportunity to introduce essentially air somewhere along that side. I'd actually like the trenches to extend past the paved playground area into the grass, so we could potentially look at it, adding taps for getting air into it, essentially candy canes. You occasionally see them, they come up out of the ground, 4-inch pipe. Some people actually paint them red and white. Others hide them with wishing wells. But they do introduce air and it works very well. School environment, I think kids would be filling that with all sorts of.
not think, no.
Right. So we'd have to come up with a different plan for that, but there's an opportunity. We can't guarantee it right now. We wanted to minimize right now the number of holes we put in the blacktop, in the play area, to get what crucial information we needed up front. I'm hoping we can keep it surgical with minimal sized areas where we'd have to be cutting and then repaving. So, you know, one of our concerns is also idiot proofing for the future, with making components as durable as possible, assuming more people are going to drive something over it that they shouldn't have. So,
If these repairs are done, what do you see the life of the system being after that?
that's a real good question. And I have to say, when people ask me that, it's a little like giving a used car to an adult versus a teenager. An adult, they can get years, a teenager might be the weekend. In this particular case, with regular maintenance, they wear out progressively, so one of the things I'm proposing is where the central distribution box is, having a manhole there so that we can inspect this, because effluent levels rise progressively, and you can measure them. And I mean, there are systems that on paper could have been considered failed. We've seen several decades actually use out of where they've just been able to manage their use. And part of the thing that's helped the school is being proactive with water-saving fixtures. It's really dropped what I would consider the water consumption rate on the place down to probably 25% of what the original design was. If you load it low enough, you know, technically you could have infinite life. So,
The manhole would be on the blacktop.
yeah.
So, any other questions?
No, we feel safe. Thank you.
I've gotten a great education from this man, I'm just gonna say. I've learned a lot about roofs and now septic tanks and leach fields, so.
Okay.
So you can keep it running until,
What's that?
you can keep it running until June?
Well, yeah, I'm actually hoping taking advantage of spring break for you folks. And, you know, we're going to have to look at the weather crystal ball. I'd like to get a crystal ball in color rather than black and white to be able to see this stuff. But I think we may be able to get it wrapped up by the end of the spring break. If weather's in our favor like it's been recently, it's been fantastic. You know, asphalt plants I don't believe are going to open up for another month. So that would be one limiting factor.
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So if you start, is there a way to start the project not all at once, but by parts, like we have 2 days?
Right.
You do some, or one day, free,
Yeah.
you do it. you can do it?
Yeah, plus I have folks that are willing to work the weekend on tough projects and stuff like that, so
Wow.
we could, I don't know when we have curriculum day or 3-day weekends that line up for your schedule, but I mean, potentially we could do that also.
Wow.
Because I
A
think,
bunch of work this past weekend, so it's beneficial that.
yeah, the big things I look at is, that central distribution box, the main one would be a primary concern. Baffles and tanks would be a secondary concern, because without the baffles, you have a continuous stirring process, nothing ever settles. And that's where you get a lot of debris getting out to the fields. And the fields are designed to handle essentially clean, liquid, high nitrogen effluent. You start putting particulate matter in there, and it's just like fouling out your dryer filter. After a certain point, your dryer doesn't work, and neither does the leaching field, because that screen's plugged. So,
How many days, assuming weather's good, is a project like this?
if I could throw everybody at it, it would be a full, probably 9-day week. Start on a Friday and end by that following Sunday. But that means I can't service any emergency calls for other people or other stuff. So I'm looking at the schedule, I'm still trying to decide how to stratify this.
It's been keeping us going though.
No,
Yeah.
Which
it's not a
is
complaint,
very
it's just
beneficial.
trying to
Yeah.
wrap my mind around it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, there's a lot of factors, weather being a large one.
Thank you very much.
Oh, another question, you know where to find me.
I have one other question.
Oh, you
With the 12,000 estimate, does that include the work that's been done to date? Or
No.
is that, no, that's the...
That's additional.
Good,
He's done all sorts of investigative work. We put, we need to do that work to figure out where we go.
Okay.
And so the estimate for the 12,000 is the where we
The
go.
new work.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Back to roots.
Okay, wait, moving on.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. The chairman's report. I had two items. One of them is, there's a town meeting coming up tomorrow. And they're addressing the school building committee.
The roofing project for the school.
The roofing project?
Yes.
Yeah, they also are addressing the school building committee. They're going to establish a building committee for center school and also all school.
But that's only for the roofs.
Only for the roofs.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
It's only for the roofs.
There are
Which is
9
what's
items-
required for.
There are about 9 items on the agenda, really. Yeah. You want a copy of this?
Yeah, and 8 of them, so there's 4 that are for center and 4 that are for hall. And the reason they're separated out is because for reimbursement, you have to say exactly what you're doing for the project. So we need a building committee for this project, for the center school roof partial replacement. And then you have to ask all the same questions. And then do the same thing for hall school. We need a building committee for the hall school total roof replacement. And you have to ask the same questions. I think 8 of those questions are really ours, and the other question that's on there is the town's.
Can I ask a question? So the building committee, it will be a different building committee just for the roof?
It's a good question, yeah. Really, it's probably me.
Okay.
Because I'm the one applying for the grant, but we have, and I'll get to this when I get to the roof replacement, but we have to review architect proposals that have already come in, but it doesn't make sense to do that until this project's approved. If it's not approved, the RFPs don't matter.
Well, also, I attended a meeting of the A board chairs, and we covered issues at all the boards in Connecticut. We had representatives from all over Connecticut there. And it was interesting in that a lot of the issues that they're having in other areas are similar to what we're having. Even the large schools, declining enrollment, all kinds of budget, the student achievement, things of that nature. And also got into an area of equity, which doesn't affect us as much as some of the larger cities and other areas, you know, like Wyndham and Hartford and New London. Also, we got into the area of sharing services, and it was interesting. I know that Phil has got us in the 4 or 5, you know, tech services, finance services, and even mowing and grass and things of that kind. I found out that we have more services that we're combining with the town than almost any other town in Connecticut. And they were surprised when I mentioned some areas that we're doing and no one else is doing it. And some of them have trouble doing anything in that area. We have good cooperation with the selectmen, so we're fortunate in that way. And also we discussed changing demographics, influences, your school system too. And rather interesting. And I guess they have something like that once a year. Okay, moving on to superintendent reports. We have quite a list here.
There is a lot going on.
We're going to be here.
All right, so the roof patching is almost complete. We have already seen a tremendous difference. HMS is done. We have one small section left at Center School to do around the hatch in the gym. It was nice to actually walk into Hall and see the buckets gone. And so we'll keep an eye on this to see, hopefully it is going to work until we're ready to replace the roof, but I'll keep you updated on it. If something pops up, we can look to see if we need to do any more patching, but so far it's better. The roof replacement. So the Board of Finance voted at their January 16th meeting to move forward with a full roof replacement. This is after you made the recommendation to do a 10-year roof on Center and patch Hall. They said no, they wanted the patching, so that's what was approved to go through. Now, you know, they understand that if the school building project occurs, that the town might have to pay some of that back. So we have architects that have submitted bids for just the architectural portion, not the construction portion. We'll have to bring them back for interviews, but I didn't think it made sense to do that before it passed town meeting. If it doesn't pass town meeting to do the project, then that's the end of this and we'll have to figure out what next, or they can make a different recommendation. I have been informed that this project, if we do it in the fall, may be done for significantly less money. And the reason why it's a slower season for the contractors. They all bid, they're all fighting for summer projects, and then the fall hits. And you can do a roofing project, I'm told, in the fall, something to consider. I've also been informed by the architects that the application process through the state is slow, does not accurately describe how slow it's happening. It is painfully slow. I had one architect say it took 90 days to get a signature. Which means basically you get a project number. So the payment on the other end is much faster, but the signatures are slower. So the town meeting's tomorrow, and that is to see if the CIP roof projects will go through. If it passes, we'll have a finance committee, which hopefully you're going to approve your committees tonight. That finance committee would come together to help you go through the bids. I will also tell you I got some recommendations from a couple of the local community folks that this is their business. They reviewed the bids for us to provide some feedback, and I will share that with the committee as well. Okay?
Did you say if we did build a school, we would not get reimbursed for this? Is that what you said, Bill?
So this is not written anywhere. Basically what it says is if you build a school within a certain period of time, that you will probably have to pay some of that back. We were told by DAS that after 5 years, a large portion, I don't know what a large portion is, has been paid already on the bond. So if you're in the building for 5 years and then you move out, you're going to have to pay something back, but it may not be the entire amount because a lot has already been paid. You're going to pay the balance. So It's not written anywhere, DAS doesn't put it in writing, they said they have some formula. It's not shared, it's one of those magic secrets. So if any of you can find that, that'd be amazing. But they will tell you that, no, you'd have to pay some back. We'll see how much that would be if there's a project.
So we would collect a percentage reimbursement.
So you get your full
But then we might have to
reimbursement.
pay it, or we get the full reimbursement.
Right, so when you do a project, once you have your number through the state and you start doing your work, they have already approved your project.
Agreed to pay for it.
Correct. And so they, you're gonna pay your architect, they cut you a check. And then when you're done, you pay your construction folks, they cut you a check. They pay, pretty much like the oil tank, I think we got like 90% back, and after they do their audit, you get the rest, the 10%. So you get your full reimbursement back early. And the reason they ask you to pay it back is if you walk away from your building. They don't want people walking away from their building. They want, legislation, I think, says 20 years.
Is the Board of Finance aware of that?
Oh, yeah.
When they made that decision?
Very much so.
Okay.
And I was clear with them that it was not going to be on the superintendent to make a decision to spend $1 million of the town's money. No way. They can make the recommendation because they adjusted it and they voted on it unanimously to move forward with it. And I was very clear that you might have to pay some money back, and they said, we want to fix the 2 roofs. We want to replace them.
So for how many years we have to stay in the building with fixed roof? So we would not have to pay back anything, 20? Or?
They won't tell you. It is a mystery, literally a mystery. So the legislation says 20 is the magic number, but they've said that after 5 years, much of their bond is paid off. So I don't have a sense. I think if we're looking that route, we would, if that ever happens, we would want to be able to talk to the DAS and say, if we walk away in year 4, what do we have to pay back? If we walk away in year 5, what do we have to pay back? If we walk away, to say, we want to know what those exact numbers are. They've got to give it to us. It's just not getting that information is unfair.
Or maybe when the application goes in, you
Yeah.
can clarify it then.
Well, no, they won't give it to you because they don't know what their bond is. Because remember, their bond is not just for Willington, it's all of their projects. Roof stuff. All right. Portrait of a graduate. So we have a district steering committee, and they've started the process of creating our portrait of a graduate. I've talked to you about this. This is the identification of the portrait of a graduate. It creates an educational vision for our system-wide transformation. We've spent a long time, and Brent can attest to this, we spent a long time researching, identifying, discussing different attributes we believe that our graduates need to be successful in going into high school and beyond. After several meetings and conversations, we actually have identified 4 attributes. We've whittled it down after a lot of discussion. And we're going to be welcoming staff, the school staff, in the near future for feedback. After we get feedback from the school staff, we will open up the conversation to additional stakeholders, including town officials, board members, parents, business owners, the things that we want the feedback, and the group really wants to be able to talk about how they got to those 4. You want to know what 4 are, right? So we said that we want our students to be good communicators, effective collaborators, critical thinkers, and compassionate individuals. I'll share more about this work as we continue, the development of the portrait of a graduate. And I just have to say the committee, this is not an easy task, and the committee's done a really good job of kind of moving this forward. And it'll be interesting to see how the staff responds to what they've identified. Questions?
Could you say those quick things again, please?
Absolutely. So communication or communicator, collaborator, critical thinker, and we want them to be compassionate.
I think those are excellent.
We have a lot of things that fall under those things, under those attributes.
That's just the beginning.
That is, our definition is just branch out, so it's good. We have a good plan, but we want to make sure that what we have identified, that the community also supports, and that starts with the school and then branches out from there.
Does this take into consideration that every student is an individual and has their own goals and objectives,
It does,
talents, and everything else?
absolutely.
So how does this fit in with something like that?
So basically what you're gonna do is, you're going to, and I say you, this group will, once, say these are the 4, they'll identify expectations by grade level and what those things look like at kindergarten. What do they look like at 4th grade for each of these items? And that's what we're expecting kids to do. And they're grade level appropriate. We're not expecting a kindergartner to come in and do a presentation. But what you saw tonight for presentation, for someone coming up and, leading us in the pledge, or that communication piece is our expectation. We want students to be able to communicate well. So that way when they leave us, if they have an issue in the high school, they need to talk to a teacher, that they're confident to do that. If they want to lead a group, they can do that. It's a lot of things. So we'll build that. Okay, EduTrack donation option, we opened up, yeah.
If we adopt something like this in Untitled well, is the height limit the same thing?
So they have,
Is it gonna continue?
they have a portrait of a graduate. They do.
Portrait of a graduate?
They do. In our, so they have seven attributes, I believe, at E.O. Smith. And we fit into it. What their feedback to us was 7 is a lot. And that's what they're learning. They've spent a lot of time just on communication so far, and they're finding it's a lot of work just to identify those things. And they said if we can make any recommendation, shorten it. Make your list shorter and really hone in on what those specifics are. So ours actually work very well to feed into what E.O. Smith has. And we looked at that as we developed ours.
Well, I don't know if it would feed into exactly what they have, because I don't know too much about what they're doing, but I think the attributes they have, or the program they have with E.O. Smith, is built around each student. And so that each student really has their own program when they go to school.
They do, and these are the attributes that they're looking for as they build their program. They have their 7 attributes.
Right.
Yeah. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. More to come, always. The EduTrack donation option, we saw this in the newspaper, and we've talked about trying to figure a way to do this. We opened a new option to the school community on Friday to allow them to make monetary donations to our food services program to be distributed to families in need. And community members can go onto our online system. We're going to put a link right on our website. And basically what they do is they can make a donation any size they want. It goes into a pool, and the district team, probably school counselors, the food services director, administrators, we will then distribute, I'm on that, we will then distribute based upon need. This is not really for students that qualify for free or reduced lunch. This is for someone we know is having a hardship. They're struggling to make payments. Our counselors know those families. And this is something that we then can drop money into their account. So they are struggling to write that $20 check or pay that lunch or their breakfast fee, we can help them out. And so we've already had people donate money right away. There was $50 in the account right away. And we often have people ask, what can we donate for supplies? And teachers like their specific things. They like their certain pencils, and I've said, we don't need supplies. If you want to make a donation, make it to the school food services account, and we can distribute that to the kids that need it. And they've really appreciated that. We have one family in town that has made multiple donations, and it's greatly appreciated. The Hms Coffeehouse was last Wednesday, and the band students at Hull School hosted the first ever coffee house. This was entirely student directed. So they chose the music. They modified each song for their specific instrument. Sometimes there was no lines written. They had to work with a teacher to write it. Their music. They emceed the event. They performed their music. They had all sorts of food there. It was an amazing display of student-centered learning. So just wanted to share that out with you. Congrats to Mrs. Canestrari, who was the HMS band teacher, and her students for a fantastic evening. That was the first, and they plan on doing it again. It was a lot of work for students, but wow, it was amazing. CES Read Across America was March 2nd at Center School. They participated in a variety of reading activities. They welcome guest readers into their classrooms. And just a big thanks to all the teachers. It's a fun day. It's busy. They have rocking readers in front. They sit in beanbag chairs. They have guest readers. They do all sorts of activities. Mrs. Redding, I think, is kind of the big chair, but the teachers are the ones that make it happen in their classrooms. They do those special events, so hats off to them. The special ed audit, so we have the full document, the executive summary. We're writing an executive summary. I say we. Marcia and I are working on this. The administrative team reviewed the special ed audit. It is very dense. There's a lot of data, and there's a lot of recommendations. And so what we're doing is we're working to provide an executive summary that has an action plan for the board and the staff and community members. I think it's important probably for the staff to see that we hear their concerns that are in the document, and we want to identify how we're going to address those concerns. I think that's important. And so some of the key findings that were noted in the audit, we need to put strategies in place to improve collaboration and communication. And that's across parent to student, parent to special education teacher, special education teacher to special education teacher, special education teacher to general education teacher, across everybody. We just need to, and parents, we need to improve those things. To provide more ongoing intensive professional development, that was a big piece. One of the big questions I had from the get-go was, the number of paraprofessionals that we have, does this audit support what we have? And it did. And she had said that based upon your specific student needs, and there will be a highlight section kind of what some of those student needs are, that we have the budget for the proper number of paraprofessionals. That we are higher than the state average, but it is appropriate, and I was glad to see that. So we're hoping to provide the board with a full presentation on the executive summary in April, and thanks to Marcia for all her work on that. All right. Probably my least favorite topic of the evening, the coronavirus. I can't tell you the number of hours that I spent on this, and I'll leave my thoughts on it aside of where I think the politics are. So we have a letter prepared that's going out to staff and families tomorrow. I'll also share it with the board. You're going to get a copy of it when I send it out. It's not finalized yet. Some of the key points that are highlighted in the letter, just some of our cleaning efforts, what we're doing. We have dedicated additional resources to the cause, meaning people and materials. So I have some custodians that are working overtime to do some extra scrubbing of desks at night. They're getting overtime to do it, but it's chemicals that you can't spray on desks when kids are banging. But those are some of the things that we're doing. We've been identifying methods to comply with recommendations from the governor, Eastern Highlands Health District, and the Commissioner of Education. I will tell you that some of those recommendations that I thought they were a little excessive for communities that are still managing just where they're at, if they don't have any cases or there's no cases around them. But we have to agree to it. We have to follow them. So the governor's office recommended postponing or canceling events with groups of more than 100 attendees and restricting travel outside of Connecticut. As a result, and after communication with Mr. Craig, Mr. Phillips, other superintendents, and the director of Eastern Highlands Health District, we are notifying the community tomorrow that the musical Matilda will be postponed until June. That was a huge decision. I advocated for this. I called the director of Eastern Highlands Health District and said, we have a play in a week and a half. And the the Commissioner of Education listed sporting events and plays directly on their letter. He said I was probably the superintendent number 17 that called him today. And so basically any event that we have over 100 people in a room at a time, if we can avoid those events, they're recommending that we avoid those events. So I talked to Mr. Phillips, who was fantastic. I gave him some time today. He got on the phone. I was afraid because we have rights to the show. We have a lot of things set up for a pit crew to come in. We're paying them. He's organized a ton of things. We're gonna push it out to June. God, I hope that gym's not hot, and I hope the coronavirus is gone. He's anticipating selling 900 tickets over 3 nights. There was no way we could limit performances to 100 attendees each performance. There's just no way to do it. So that will go out. I will tell you, I received numerous emails today, because I'm sure they saw the governor's thing last night, requesting that the show go on schedule. I will tell you that the Eastern Highlands Health District basically, without saying it, said, you're on your own if you do. You're going against governor's recommendations, you're going against the Eastern Highlands recommendations. I'm not comfortable doing that. Okay? The other big piece, poor Jason got hit hard today, is the trip to New York City. They have a trip to see a Broadway show in New York City. You get on the phone for that. I tell you what, we had a pretty good day, because I've heard some trips they're not giving any money back, or they're getting hit. They're going to move our Broadway trip. We're not going to get penalized for it, even if the coronavirus is for. Are you going? Even if the coronavirus is bad, they're going to find a date for us in June that we're going to be able to go. If someone can't go and they've already paid, we might have to work that out. But the fact that we're going to be able to reschedule was a very big deal. So that news will all go out tomorrow. The other thing that's going in that letter is that M&J has assured us that they're proactively cleaning buses. They actually have, they have a regular cleaning schedule, but they've actually brought in a detailer for an additional 1 day per week for Wellington. The person's just rotating around, so they're coming in and doing additional cleanings for us, which is good. And I did not have to reach out to them, they told me. So we'll be diligent to keep all the members of our community safe. If you've seen any stuff, they closed one district today for 2 weeks. I'm meeting with union representation tomorrow, Thursday, to talk about if there's any distance learning. I will tell you that based upon the reports from the Commissioner of Education, they're not going to approve too many plans from what I saw, meaning that you're going to have to do your 180 days. So if you close for 10 days, you better be going to school on April vacation, and you better be going to school through the end of June if you want to waive it.
What if you did distance learning?
You have to get, they're saying that you don't have to get approval, but no, you can do distance learning, but the problem is what's the product, and they're not saying they're going to approve it, but you have to say exactly what you're doing, and you have to meet the state requirements. So it's still a little gray. We're going to talk about it. We have some ideas. South Windsor has snow day. They have the snow day learning thing on day 4 of a snow day. They have packets. They only have 2 days worth. Is it linked directly to where they are in the curriculum? No, it's general. I just don't know how feasible that would be. The other issue with the distance learning and learning from home piece is that you still have to cover special education hours. So am I going to send every kid home with a Chromebook? Am I going to ask teachers to log in from home? Am I going to ask teachers to come in? What's reasonable? And those are the things that I'm going to meet with leadership about on Thursday to say, what are your thoughts on this? Are they getting any guidance from CEA? Everyone's kind of handling this a little bit differently with distance learning, but the letter that we got yesterday with a flow chart, and I'll show you, I mean, they are flat out looking at, and you hit this 180-day notice for snow days normally. This time it's about the coronavirus. And it basically says no distance learning in lieu of on-site school, on-site schooling, and close the school outright if necessary. It tells you what you have to do, but they're telling you, no, you're not going to get a waiver if you didn't maximize your days.
But that's not right, because they're recommending that businesses do that.
You're right.
If businesses can do it, I mean, we could have conference calls, we could have FaceTime.
But the difference is not every family has wireless, has access, has stuff in there, and it's required that people go to school. It's not required that you go to work. So,
This has come up, this 180 days has come up several times. Snow days was one. Most recently was, I believe, was tornadoes in the western part of the state.
Yeah.
There was no waiver. So.
But if all the schools in the state.
Listen, I agree.
Where the waiver
This
will
is
come
moving.
in is if you go to school all through April break and you go to school to June 30th, state law says you can't go into July.
That's right.
They will pass the waiver so you don't have to go through the summer.
Beyond,
But
Yeah,
you
I
still
mean, what if
have to
you
say,
have to close for
right.
6 weeks? You know, you still have to do what you have to do, but they have an option in the direst of emergencies,
Right.
but they don't want to go there.
now, what are your guidelines for closing? If you have a child that's positive?
we would talk to Eastern Highlands, but I guarantee that we would close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any connection to the university? The university, UConn closes, which they're talking about going online after.
Yeah.
It's a possibility. No one said it's happening, it's just
Yeah.
in
They're
emails coming
preparing
out
for
and
it.
saying,
Yeah.
would there be any,
So the commissioner and the governor's recommendation is to talk to your local health department, that's Eastern Highlands. I'm not making decisions in a vacuum. I'm making decisions with the professionals. If you've seen some of the reports out there, there are some doctors that have said flat out, this is just being blown out of proportion. But you're gonna hear the phrase abundance of caution constantly. That is like the phrase that's coming out of everyone's mouth. Do they know something we don't know? I don't know. But we'll have to weigh those decisions as they come. And again, it's not gonna be just me. I'm gonna be talking to the health professionals and saying, what's the recommendation?
Are we making recommendations so that parents take their kid's temperature, say every morning before they get on the bus? And if your kid has a temperature of, and fill in the blank with what you think.
It says it in the letter. If your child is sick or has a fever, keep it down.
And home. But because it's unfair to the other students, and it's unfair to the bus driver, and to the people that work in the school system. This is the letter that E.O. Smith sent out. Have you seen this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I just got it today.
She was on my phone call. Yeah, we talked today. All the superintendents have been collaborating on this. I went to Eastern Highlands because I wanted to hear it from the director. And the director is the one that said, if you can't get it under 100, you need to think about those events. But the high schools have lunch waves of 300. That's not what they're referring to. If you saw all the state playoff games for CIAC, for high schools, they canceled them all. So, abundance of caution, right? That's what they're doing. We just are taking day by day and making sure we have a plan for how to address these things. Another piece that has been addressed is that if we go out for 2 weeks, we still are supposed to provide lunch and breakfast for students that need it. I already have a plan. So those are the planning things that we're doing. And so we do bags, I've already talked to Wendy Knight, the food service director, and said we would do a bagged distribution out of Hall School. They could do it. It wouldn't be a hot meal, but it would meet nutrition guidelines. And
They could be picked up.
Could be the drive-through.
They would be picked up.
You could
That's
just stand out in the back.
basically what it would be. So, but when I say there's a lot of factors, a lot of moving pieces, and listen, this could change tomorrow, folks. If there's suddenly 5 cases in this neck of the woods, it changes things for us. So we're taking it a day at a time. I can't tell you the number of emails I've gotten on this, and not from parents, but from the professionals. We are well informed, and we're getting a lot of information. We sent out an updated hand washing flyer today to the schools, and it now says don't panic on it, which I thought was funny. A lot of this I think is media driven, but we still have to have an abundance of caution.
And are we telling our staff members that if they fly anywhere, they can't come into school for 2 weeks?
So
That's a decision we're making, but this is going to be an unpaid vacation.
we cannot tell them that.
We can't tell them.
They have to be, if there's someone that their doctor tells them they should need to be quarantined, that's what they're going to have to do.
Because I know Travelers has told people, if you've been on a plane, you don't come in unless you've been free for 14 days.
Yeah. Luckily, our staff is here, so.
In those hospitals, there's the same order. If you are out of the country, 2 weeks you are home.
They don't even want you traveling out of the state.
the state has said to their employees, they're not having meetings outside of the state now.
Brian works for Mitsubishi and there's no travel, it's an international company.
So there's a lot of moving parts with this. We'll keep you updated if I get some information. The good thing for us in this area, we'll see what happens with UConn, because that is that's a lot of people there. But when they had something on the news about potential testing at UConn, it's like, UConn is safe. There was somebody who was quarantined, it wasn't a test positive, so. We have 2 cases.
Until everybody goes off on spring break and comes back.
But
Which I
again,
don't
remember
think we're supposed to do.
This is like 99.7% success for treatment for 50 and under. I mean, this is something, we're just trying to stop the spread. That's the whole purpose of this. My least favorite topic tonight. All right, so the judicial branch grant, the PTA collaborated with us. We were notified that the state grant we applied for additional supplies and clubs. It was approved. The funding is a little slow. We're still waiting for that first dollar to show up in the bank account. We keep asking them to check the funds because it is funneled through the PTA as a nonprofit. Once it comes in, we will get that money, but it has to come through the PTA, and I haven't seen it yet. They told me the money was coming, I haven't seen it, so I'll let you know. But this will help provide additional opportunities for our students that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Do they apply for that every year? Or is this-
No, it's a grant that came out last year that someone at the 24th hour said, do you want to apply? And I said, how much? And they said $25,000 a year for 2 years. And I said, absolutely, what do I need to do? I wrote a 1-page summary and it was accepted. And so we've submitted additional information. And again, focused on providing opportunities for clubs and additional supplies for clubs. So, and it'll roll into next year as well. I want to make sure that, I hate to say I'm a little nervous, but I want to make sure the money goes before I do something big with this, because I'd hate to do something big and then find out the state couldn't afford it and they don't give you the money. It does say that on the grant, yes.
So it's 24,000 each year?
Correct.
For 2 years, so it's totally
Correct.
48?
It's $25,000 per year, so it's a $50,000 grant. But it's a reimbursement grant, so if you only spend 18 in the first year, you only get 18. We're trying to maximize those dollars that are only in the trust. Yes. We received a resignation from Angela Ruiz. She was the long-term sub at HMS, the Spanish teacher. She resigned. We posted the position. We hope to fill it through, though it's a shortage area. It was hard finding a long-term sub. We're trying to find some creative solutions for, getting people to do it as a DSAP. They might have to take classes. They have some programs you can do if you speak Spanish, to take some tests to be certified. This is a struggle to fill, so we'll see where this goes. We received a retirement letter from Willa Burgess. Willa, I will say, an expert teacher, 34 years in Willington. She's a veteran. She's still cranking, and I talked to her the other day. I went to her room and I said, it's amazing to see someone that's been in the business for 34 years, and you walk into the person's classroom and just like, they're just moving along still. Everything is still action. She's not on this retirement slide, if you know what I mean. She's just, I can't express my gratitude for what she's given the center school and what she's providing to the kids. So obviously I wish her well in her retirement, and we'll invite her in at some point towards the end of the year. New staff is a little quirky. So we identified a replacement for special education teacher Danielle Nash, who I told you went out to Ellington. We hired Marla Percorni, who was the long-term sub that we had hired for Mary DeGostin out on leave for this year. So Marla is now ours, no longer a long-term sub, but now we're looking for a long-term sub for special education for the remainder of the year, and Marcia's on that. Just so you know, Marcia sent out an email to like 1 billion people, anybody that was connected to special ed, to see if they wanted to come and even if they were retired, we kept getting emails that saying, I live in Australia now, I'm retired, I'm 82, I don't want to teach, I'm like, you know? So, but she's still fighting for those candidates, so we'll see what comes through. We also accepted Erica Bouchard's request to fill the 7th grade math teacher position. Erica is our employee already. She was doing math intervention. She kindly agreed to fill the 7th grade role this year when we could not fill the vacancy. I think she fell in love with the classroom again. And so we're lucky to have her in there. So we've posted for the math intervention position. We're in the process of interviewing candidates. Erica will continue to do curriculum work for us through a stipend, which is much appreciated. So new staff, but I'm not really. The PD day in February, we had a successful PD day. Some de-escalation training for members of our crisis team. We reviewed some new science units, part of the NGSS rollout. We had teams working on the implementation of Readers and Writers Workshop. They had team meetings. It was a successful day. Lots of good feedback on that. I'd like to schedule the visits again for, especially new board members. We scheduled visits to go out into the schools, small teams, 2 or 3, to go and take tours to see what's going on. You want to get a sense of, you haven't been there in a few years, to get a sense of what's going on, etc. Take a tour of hall, walk into some classrooms, ask some questions, see how we're applying dollars and what things are going on in school. So I'm going to have Brenda reach out to you, and I'm going to leave it to her unless you have any other suggestions. If he wants to create the groups, or it's by schedule, hey, I can do this day, and they're not all day. They're like, you know, half hour here at one school, half an hour at the other, maybe 45 minutes. They're not all day long. Donna, I know tax season for you will be hard. Yeah, it'll be 2 or 3 depending on who can go that day. But I think it's good to see, because you can also see what's changed. You know, if you've been on the board and you've already taken the tour, what's new, what's happening. And you can see things like the Kindness Project. You can see some of those things in the schools. So I'll have Brenda schedule that. The Board of Ed retreat update. So Brenda gave me an update today that 429 retreat, yes, was heard. Elena, Michelle, Tracy, Donna, and Ann, and I don't have a response from Liz yet. So if everybody could do 429, and we can kind of get Liz to say yes to that day, I think we should try and do that night. And then 5-1 was the training, and that was her, Donna, and we're waiting for Liz to respond. Okay? Perfect. So we're going to get them out. All right? Moving along. We received some rough information. Remember I talked to you about some savings in the bus line by doing a pre-K through 8th grade run, adjusting some start times, that it was really raw. We were looking to see what it would cost from the bus company first. We received some information from M&J. I will tell you that I'm meeting with Jill, Superintendent for Region 19, on Thursday. On initial review, both districts would save some money. It's not small dollars, it's some big dollars, but it's, I'm going to be honest and say it's not as big as I thought. So Jill and I are going to talk and see if it makes sense to go 1 more year. Her contract is being negotiated next year. We have 2 more years on our contract. It might make sense for us to go out to bid after that. And the reason why is because our bus, in the new proposal, our bus cost per day, even though we had significant savings, went up $100 a day. Each bus. I found that to be excessive. And so we would go from 6.5 buses to 9, and it was like $326 to $420 per bus per day.
And we charged per day, not per...
That's where the way the contract is written, yes, per day. And so basically the total cost, we would be saving approximately $40,000. Region 19 would be saving about $60,000. I'll be honest, I'd love to see us in the $60,000 range plus, and in savings. So more to come.
So we could add the EO route for free for what we're doing now, if it went earlier, if it's per day?
That's why it's a joint contract. So the reason we see savings is because she's not paying her contract and we're paying our contract. We're sharing the same boss. So let's say we pay $420 for the day, basically she's paying $210 and we're paying $210.
Okay.
And so they drive the E.O. Smith students to high school. That bus leaves the high school. They pick up all the pre-K through 8th grade students on their run. They go to Hall School. They drop their students, and this is Roth. They would drop their students at Hall School at I'm making this up, 8:15, and then drive to center and drop them off, and the same type of thing in the afternoon. I don't know if it's going to work. We haven't gotten any feedback. We haven't done presentations on it. We just need to see if there's going to be savings in it first, and how much savings, and is it worthwhile. So, more to come. I'm almost done. CIP is capital improvement plans. If you've sat through these meetings, you know that year 5 is like the year to die. If you put a project in year 5, it's never going to happen. It's just always been that way for years and years and years. They're looking for creative methods to plan the future for those major projects, the firehouse addition, the school project if there is one, road improvements. I'm part of a team that's meeting tomorrow. We're going to try and identify some of the out-of-box ideas to solve this never-ending problem of year 5. Because I'll give you an example. There's some road projects that have been there for 30 years, and they're still there, and they're still not in year 1. They're still struggling to find the funds to pay for them. If anything noteworthy comes out of that conversation, I'll let you know. But it's the it is the capital improvement committees. That's their job to set that and then share it out. Okay, so I'll let you know if anything comes out of that. I am done with that part.
Okay, we have committee reports. Curriculum committee, the finance committee, I don't think that. Yeah. We had a staff negotiation, club, wellness, security facilities, transportation. I think most of you have a copy of the committees. The policy committee did meet with Alina, and myself, and Michelle's alternate, and superintendent met with us. And we discussed some of the policy bullying committee, which we'll address later on in this meeting. And we also addressed the board vacancy and some other meetings which were put aside. And the policy meeting set up another meeting for, I have the date.
Is it like this, a week from Thursday?
A week from Thursday? Okay. Okay. But we'll post that meeting also. Okay.
On 19th.
Okay. Any other comments regarding committees? Okay, moving on to financial report.
So the 1920 budget update, you have the summary in front of you. I had a long conversation with Donna, particularly about the first 3 programs, and trying to get a better picture specifically for you, to give you a sense of what's real and what's not. And I say that because I know where the money is and where the transfers will be, but it's hard for you to see that. So we identified a different way to do this, and so I want to give you a sense of what it really looks like, and I'll tell you why. When you factor in the adjustments in salaries after you hire people or there's an open position, this year there's open positions for a bunch at Hall, so that's one of the huge reasons that you see Hall School has a lot of money in that account. What I did with Donna is I said, if we can true up the salaries when we share this report, what it will do is it'll break out what is either how much we're in the hole or how much we are in the surplus for salaries, and then it will show the balance that's in things like that you really want to know. What's left in supplies? What's left in professional development? What's left in those areas? So when you look at program 1, even though it shows a negative $1,964, after the salary line is cleared, because of all the adjustments, there's actually about $22,000 left in the supply budget at center school. That's the number I'm working off of right now. So if I take program 1, and I have, just to give you a sense, like these are all of this, both sides. The salaries are only the top section here. Once I clear that off, I want to know really what's left, because we're going to balance out the salaries from program 2, because they have the surplus. So if I'm looking at supplies at center, I'm looking at materials, we're looking at about 22,000. Hall school is about 47,000. There is about, so if you're looking at that 47,000, there's about $260,000 this year in Hall school salary line item because of open positions. I will tell you that we have some ideas about how we're going to spend this. The septic is one of them. I would recommend we make some payments on the, pay for the septic problems with this bunch of money. But once I take the salary piece out of what's left, I want to give you a real sense of what's really there. If you look at program 3, and this is the one that's always the hardest because we get billed at the end of the year for a lot of outplacements. We received a check for excess cost in the amount of $46,000. We were in the hole about $225,000. We're now in the hole about $179,000. That is what's going to be covered by fringe benefits, the excess that we have there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Transportation is just, we're waiting on a check from E.O. Smith for fuel. By the way, that we're still working on, hopefully tomorrow night, hopefully Thursday we can sign a contract, because tomorrow night for the public meeting, the town meeting, that's for the fuel tank, and that needs to be replaced. If it doesn't get replaced, we're going to have to go back and fuel up in Mansfield, and we're paying a different rate. Okay. Health services, just supplies left, really. There's still money in PD for program 6. Utilities is basically flat. Operations and maintenance, actually, we're going to be spending some money out because of the supplies now for the coronavirus. System 9, program 9 went down system-wide support because we paid for our Microsoft licenses, and you see the balance in fringe. So if you're thinking, wow, we're looking pretty good, I think we are. I will tell you that I have a transfer on for tonight for the remainder of Novus. I have several Novus projects that are tech-related that they are recommending we do. And then the septic work is also a lot of additional money that's going to come out of that amount. If I clear the salaries, does that make sense? Is it an easier way for you to look at it?
I think I'd rather see 2 lines underneath each of those, one salary, one non-salary.
Yep.
Because I'd like to still be able to track that.
That would be the intent, yes.
Okay,
correct.
yeah. So if you just separate them out without
Right.
taking it off the page. I think
Right, because I still want to show you if there's a
Yeah.
salary surplus or we're in a hole.
Right.
But
And how far off is it on one school
Correct.
versus the other school? Yeah,
Right.
thanks.
Makes sense.
And that would be for elementary, hall, and special ed.
I don't know that I can do it for, it's not going to matter as much for special ed, but it's going to matter for program 1 and program 2. Unless we see a big influx or, change in staffing in the special ed department, I would put it in, but.
It might make sense for the special ed to pull out the outplacements, because that's the one that the reimbursement comes in late. So it might be able to, that's beyond our control and always looks bad until April, May.
It doesn't look bad now, though, it's gonna look worse.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because we don't have those bills yet.
But you could have the other line not be impacted by that.
We don't have an idea of how much the bills will be.
We do. We definitely have an idea. I mean, that's what we base upon all of our costs on. That's how we came up with what the shortfall is. But depending on if there's a change in service, if there's a change in placement, if there's, they suddenly don't need a paraprofessional, or now they do need a paraprofessional, that number could go up or down. If they need special transportation and now they don't, we do a little dance and, we save some money. So those are, it kind of goes up and down, but we do have the idea, and that's how we apply for excess cost.
And you want this money to over?
I'll get to it, yeah, we have, it's on new business, but yes. Any questions on that piece? I don't really have an update on the 2021 budget. I have not gotten any questions from the Board of Finance. I will tell you that we received the Region 19 budget, and it is a 0.5 increase to sending towns, 0.5, which is reasonable to me.
So 0.5%.
0.5%, yes, 0.5%. And then the school student activity fund. Herb asked me just to give you some of you have this already. We have one member tonight. Do you want me to fly through this just because we're, Donna, so I think you know we have a school student activity accounts. Hall School has one, Center School has one. There's policies around what they can use it for. I think Brenda copied for you did you get a copy of this? It was basically the student activity account end of year report for 2 years. Did it go into your packets?
We have something, but I
Okay,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's.
Anne's got it, so if Anne's got it, it's there.
Yes.
These are kind of the lines that they're broken out by. So assembly is
Well,
donations.
it's not stapled, it's in the other.
Correct.
And the coronavirus one?
Is it attached to the
It's
coronavirus?
next
It
to
was,
last
that's where I
page.
found mine. It's with that coronavirus grid.
It's one for HMS.
So this is where, how we pay for field trips and things like that. It's audited, it's done on a monthly basis. The ladies in the office take care of that. It also is done by the treasurer. We haven't had a treasurer for a period of time here in the town office building. So they've been doing it through the temp, and the ladies in the office have been doing their own internal audits, and they report those out. So eventually what happens is, by the time all the bills are paid, all the monies comes in, by really the end of summer, everything's settled, and I will give you a full report on how much is left, what was the money spent on. There's a gift account at Center School. There's a family that does a golf tournament. That gift amount is for anything that the Center School administrator wants to do that's additional for students. There's a line for that, for gifts. If a teacher comes and says, hey, I want to do this program in my class, and he approves it, they can take the money right out of there. So it gives you a sense, and there's obviously a policy around this too, and just, how often it's what the procedure is, how often it's reconciled, how often it's presented, and what it looks like. So that's kind of a quick, give you a sense of what's what. We do have a policy that needs to be updated around that as well.
Okay, Jim? That's an off-budget item.
Correct.
It's not in the regular budget.
And so this basically, it looks like when trips are happening and things like that.
Yeah.
Did the fundraising money go into I know the band used to sell pies.
Exactly. Yeah, so it goes into that account and they track it all, they have to count all the money, field trips, all those things, yeah. And if there's money through EduTrack, which is the online payment system, it also hits the same accounts. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Okay, next order of business is the approval of minutes, February 11th, 2020.
I move to approve the minutes of February 11th, 2020.
I second it.
Okay, so in second, any comments or questions relative to the minutes? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Okay. Next item is approval of annual health fund certification.
Yep, so
We have done in the past.
we do it every March. Yeah.
Township.
And I'm gonna apologize because I just gave the motion to Michelle, it's a long motion. Just to give you the quick piece of this is that because we participate in the National School Lunch Program and we are reimbursed, we have to follow their guidelines. It's a requirement that this annual statement is approved by the Board of Education, and it's so that you can get all these monies back. You have to approve, like, you're not gonna have certain sales, you still have to meet their expectations for the National School Food Lunch Program. You have to meet their expectations. If you don't get the money. So by reading that,
And I'll give you a copy when I read it. So I move to adopt language for the healthy food option pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 10-215F. The Willington Board of Education certifies that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under our jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups.
Okay, need a second?
I second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. They were approved this motion regarding healthy food options. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions?
sorry.
Okay. The next motion, would you like to read it?
Sure, let me take a deep breath. I move that the Willington Board of Education allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages not listed in Section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. Number one, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. Number two, the sale is at the location of the event. And number three, the food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held.
So she just wants to know.
Discussion.
It means
So we need
that,
to second it. That was a motion?
Herb
seconded it.
I second it.
Are you second?
so basically what it means is if we have a school dance and they want to sell something that doesn't meet the expectation, they can.
So we're allowed to have fun food, not during the school day.
If it's for an event and not something regular like practice.
Yeah, not something like practice.
You're allowed to sell it, right?
Are they allowed to
Sale.
consume it also?
No, you have to take it home.
Please keep in mind that chocolate comes from a bean and bean is a vegetable.
There you go. I prescribe to that as well.
Okay, any other comments or questions regarding the motion? Everyone understands what the motion contains? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstentions? None. Unanimous. We have one more motion.
Oh.
This is for previous year's motion. Is this B?
I was in detached.
I just did
Yeah,
it.
you're
I just did it in B. We still have transfer of funds though, that's a motion.
yeah, that's a different one. You're good with healthy food. Yes, you're all set with healthy food.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay, so C is the transfer of
Under
funds.
new business, we have item C, transfer of funds for IT services. Novus. This is an IT group.
Correct. So I brought this up during the budget discussions that when we budgeted for this year, we didn't have a contract with Novus. We were with Custom Computers still. When we signed with them, it was a higher amount. Novus has said they would work with us, meaning that if we signed for 5 days a week, which is what we signed for, but then could not get the additional money, that they would decrease services and until we did budget for enough money. They have not decreased services at all. So because we have the additional money in the salaries, Erica, through the Board of Selectmen, she's going to request an additional piece that Donna has said she has in her budget, and I'm requesting the additional piece from the board to cover the balance to maintain 5 days a week. I will tell you that the level of service that we're getting from Novus is incredible. For what we're paying for this group, it's expensive, but compared to having 5 people on with benefits, it's not even close. So the transfer amount that we're looking for, and we do transfers by program, we would be transferring $20,845 out of program 2, which is Hall School, to program 9. That transfer would cover our portion to maintain Novus services through June, the end of June. And you have already approved in your budget 5 days of service next year for July 1, if it's all approved.
Phil, is the IT person is through Novus?
Yes.
Yeah, he was
Yes.
very helpful from
They are
getting the email.
fantastic. Yes.
So,
Does the town involved in this at all?
Yeah, so they, who knows how this percentage came up, they pay 52%, we pay 48%. I don't know how that happened, it's a shared service.
We'll have to check the budget to see
Um,
if they're paying more.
Yeah, but Erica and Donna and I met, and we know we have the money to cover this because of the salary account, and feel like it's a good thing to do. I don't want to see us decline services. And to be honest with you, I may come back with additional requests from that salary funding for specific projects that need to happen through Novus that they're recommending. They've given us a list of recommendations and priorities, and we know what needs to happen.
do we have 5 days budgeted for next year?
Yes,
Oh, good.
we do.
I move that we move $20,845 from Program 2, HMS, to Program 9, System-Wide Support, to continue the Novus Services contract through the end of the year.
I'll second it.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Any comments or questions regarding the motion? All those in favor of the motion to transfer the funds signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None. Okay. Moving on to the next item, which is an action item. Also, policy number 5131.911, which is student bullying. It's not a new policy with us. This is brought before the board so that we are in compliance with the new regulations as far as the state is concerned. And the board promotes secure and a happy environment for students, hopefully, and we prohibit any form of bullying on school property and also off the property under certain conditions. Bullying is defined in the new item in the red in the papers that have been passed out to you. And I don't know if all of you had a chance to look at them all, but they have defined bullying a little more extensively than in our original policy. They cover cyberbullying and physical and emotional attributes such intimidating, violence, and things of that nature. And those are all outlined in the new bullying policy. Also involves employees, school employees, also defined what a safe and a school environment is. Also involves parental involvement, intervention, concepts for incidents, prohibits discrimination, also has provisions for the school policy to be distributed to the staff. So the staff has a copy of this. And also the staff, I believe, in the new policy has some kind of professional development yearly, annually, so the staff does get training. The budget policy is a tricky policy, and it's very confidential. And if an incident does occur, then it has to be investigated by the administration. And there's a procedure in the new policy that they have to follow, and it's not instantaneous. In other words, it's documentation. They have to interview the victim and all the parties involved. The parents are involved, so that parents generally expect something to be done instantly, and they want information on the policy, and they can't get it because the policy doesn't permit that, and it doesn't state legislation permit it. So that any incident that occurs has to go through the procedure and plan as outlined in the policy. And the interventions, as far as I know, Phil, are confidential. In other words, whatever happens to the student who precipitates an incident, they are covered under confidentiality. And so the parents are sometimes in the dark in relation to the outcome of what happens after the final decision. But it is a new policy. I don't know if you got a chance to read it entirely, but if you have any questions, now is the time to bring them to the board.
Any question? I don't believe that our staff is necessarily trained to do in-depth cyberbullying investigations and some of these things. At what point in time does it get turned over to somebody that this is their area? Not only so that it's properly investigated, but so that our staff isn't tied up with this when they're supposed to be teaching.
Remember that this investigation is not done by a teacher. This investigation is always done by an administrator. Sometimes, depending on the student, you might have a social worker or school counselor help out with some of the investigation if they have a good relationship with that student. But the majority of the findings are coming through, those findings are coming through an administrator. And so,
is the attorney involved?
Sometimes the attorney is involved, sometimes we're calling the police, sometimes, I mean, this is, I mean, you're using every resource you can. Sometimes you're asking, am I allowed to look at a cell phone? You're getting permissions to, permission to look at a cell phone now. So there's a lot of documentation that goes along with it. Any of the red that's in here, and I told this to the committees, that the majority of this policy is, as it is in front of you, it's just a statute. You really have to approve kind of the way it's written. I know that Elena and I shared a concern that the way the modification to the policy was written was that it initially said person, meaning that someone other than a student could make a bullying claim, and our attorney did not change it because he felt the same way. So the way it says one or more students, it's in there as students, is not, this policy has always been intended for bullying regarding students. So it's, the changes that are in there are basically statutory, and this is constantly evolving. I know they're looking at the bullying policy again now in the new legislation. If it changes again, we'll have to adapt again. But the investigation is long. There's a lot of documentation. And Donna, you would ask for, what it looks like of what's in the office. And so it's generic. It doesn't have a name on it. If someone wants to come into the office and see this, it's basically how many cases of confirmed bullying cases do you have? It just has a number there. And we put the date because we can tie the date to the case. And all of the data is not with this, meaning the administrator keeps the data.
Yeah, no, that part I didn't think should be public. What I was more looking at is I was curious how many cases were brought and how many cases, this says one case was confirmed.
Correct.
But
And there's a lot of cases that are brought, but remember that sometimes there's mean behavior, but it doesn't meet the bullying definition. It doesn't mean there's not consequences, it doesn't mean there's not follow-through, it just doesn't meet the definition. So that's the big thing for administrators, and it's frustrating for parents sometimes, because they want to say, that was bullying. Well, according to the definition, it might not be. But we still are convincing that parent that, look, we're still going to follow through. We don't want to see this continue. Here are the action steps that we're doing for your child. And Herb was talking before, we're not always allowed to share what the action steps are for the other child because it's confidential. And so sometimes that's frustrating for parents as well. But we'll have additional regs that the administrators will, to make sure the same paperwork, they're completed with paperwork. If there's anything that goes, that aligns with this policy, and you know, they have to complete the investigation.
So the policy committee consisting of Ann, Elena, and myself, the superintendent is going to be up here. We bring it to the board for action or approval.
We decided to bring it now. Normally, we read it and then give a month before we vote on it. But we felt it was important that we have the policy in place in case it's needed. So if we could vote tonight, that would be good. If anybody needs more time with it, we can honor that too. But it would be good to get the policy into place if we could.
I make a motion to approve policy 5131.911 on bullying.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of approving the bullying policy as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Okay, moving on to the school-based health services.
So you had your presentation tonight, you had a chance to ask questions. I think the biggest thing for us is what this group has to provide as additional resources for us without a charge, without a fee. The board would have to, if you approve this, you would have to do a policy around it. I have a model policy around it. And we would have to develop administrative regs. We'd be looking to do this for the start of next year, not now, so we give some time to do that. This group, the quality of the person that we would be getting, I think that's what we've heard feedback. I talked to the superintendent from Stafford. You know, that's the quality of person that you're getting as support on your staff or students who need the support. Oftentimes the students who need the support are the ones that parents aren't able to get them to outside services someplace else. And the fact that we can provide this, we have a lot of kids now. That's probably the biggest change in our population. The number of students who need services, some sort of counseling, is really high. And that's not just a WIllington problem. I mean, you said 100 students out of 440 students have some sort of counseling. It's pretty high. I think if you adopt this policy, you state, if you adopt the program, you state exactly what you're adopting, not the medical, not recommending the medical, that you're not doing the dental right now, maybe future down the road you can consider that, but that you would be adopting, and basically you're allowing me to sign a contract with this group for behavioral services.
It sounded like the dental was only, like 2 days in the fall and 2 days in the spring because they have to be 6 months apart anyway. Is there a reason why you wouldn't start with the dental now and see what the, see what the uptake is?
No, I think we could. I think we wanted our message really to be clear. It's about behavioral. The behavioral support we need. I didn't want to get into, and Marcia, I think you could chime in on this too if you don't mind her. When the conversations that we've heard from teachers is that it's all around behavioral support. And that was our focus. So when Marcia found this opportunity, at no cost to us, and we're only providing a space, it just seemed to be a no-brainer. So I think that's really the reason why. It wasn't that we were discounting the dental services that could be provided. It was just that we're really focused in on the behavioral portion, and that's a priority for us.
Could this be a one-year contract?
It's ongoing, and I asked that, we're a small district, we have limited students. And that was my concern, can we sustain something like this? And they felt very strong that it is sustainable. For some reason that we're not finding that families are accessing the service, then, we would have a conversation with them, but they had no concern. So it would be sustainable, it would continue.
But you have the right at any time that you don't feel it's working.
And we talked to them about that, yeah, we asked if we don't get the right person in there, and they said, we don't have that problem.
I think that the lack of adequate number of slots for young people to receive counseling within close range to here is different than the capacity to receive dental services. There are dentists that have openings that you can see within a couple of months. There are not for young people in terms of behavioral health services, so
we've experienced that.
I was asking that the dental, if there was a reason, not because I think we should necessarily go there. I think that in terms of, I have heard from a number of parents the difficulty of trying to get an appointment for a child. And the struggle not only to, they would bend over backwards to fit their schedule. This is convenient on top of that, but there aren't even slots available for them to take. So I think this is a tremendous idea.
All we can really do is get a list of providers that are in the area. That's what we're supposed to do. And we know some of the names on the list don't have open slots. We try and maybe get lucky, but a lot of them don't take new patients.
Well, and I think from what I've heard, there aren't a lot of people who take young children, especially as they get into the middle school age. It's very difficult to find services anywhere in close proximity. And then you have to find the right fit. So if you don't find the right fit for your kid with one person, there's not 10 more options. You're stuck.
Parents have the option to say no in this situation too.
Yeah.
And it's on the service directors in Marshall, if you making phone calls to a school counselor to say, look, if we have this opportunity, are you interested in meeting these folks or not? And if they say no, let's leave the conversation.
I think this is a gift that we can offer our community without any cost.
I look at it totally differently. I will say that I am incredibly concerned about this on multiple levels. One, I looked at their website. I spent a significant amount of time, all the different things, their locations, what they do. One of the things I did see on their map is they are already servicing people from WIllington. So, with the beautiful color map, and you can see everything that's light blue, according to them, residents from those towns are getting services from them. So Willingtonites are already getting the services. The other thing is the amount of time the kids are going to lose in class. A normal therapy session is around 50 minutes. She said they're 30 minutes. They might even be group sessions. I talked to a friend of mine who teaches in Manchester to see, what are you guys doing? The people that they have that do any kind of counseling are employees of the school. The one aspect that she wasn't sure about is and she teaches at the high school, they do have a drug and alcohol counseling. She was not sure if that group was an employee of the Board of Ed or not, but that's not really directly what we're talking about. And so when I look at this, I said, how do you feel about something like this? And she said, one of the biggest frustrations for teachers is when kids are constantly being pulled out of class, you're trying to keep them in the loop of what's going on so that they're not missing something and accommodate it, and you're playing catch up. When I looked at what we are supposed to be doing as a board, our mission, goals, and objectives, nowhere in here does it say that we should be responsible for providing quality mental health care. I am not qualified to determine if somebody's good at what they do or not when it comes to something like this. I feel it's an incredibly personal decision that each kid that needs help should be getting the help, but it's not going to be a cookie cutter fit. And so if we have somebody who's spending half a day at center and half a day at hall, and they're going back and forth 5 days a week, that person may not be the right fit for that kid. And my concern is that in the process, we're setting up kids to be bullied because some people may not take it well that, you know, somebody else is going for help, or that there's not room in the schedule for them, so they're being left out. And I think that families are such an incredibly important, integral part of good mental health. And they're talking about family meetings. Well, the school is from 7:30 to 2:30. When are families gonna come in? When are parents gonna have a chance to talk to the counselor right after the meeting? When is the kid gonna have a chance to process and decompress before they go back into the classroom environment? I would feel much better if this same group that has managed to set up sites all over the state would open up a place at Phelps Plaza where there's space. The dentist is still there. I actually drove through today. The doctor's not there anymore. But then they'd have a space in town where it could be all year round. If somebody needs help, cutting them off to 3 days during the summer
Wasn't that a minimum?
That was a minimum.
it's, you know, she said 3 days over the summer.
She said a minimum.
Minimum 3 days.
And where are they gonna meet? Are we gonna have our buildings open? I think that this is a good idea and a bad location. That they should be in the public, not in the school, that way they can have evening hours and Saturday hours where families can do what they need to do, and not take away from instruction time.
Okay, any other comments? No?
Well, I just, from a perspective of working in an elementary school where there are daily, sometimes hourly disruptions in classrooms because of students that are dysregulated, the services that this might provide could be an assistance to those students so they could be more present during the times they're in the classroom, as well as allow the other students in the classroom who are being disrupted by their dysregulation of these individuals to be more productive as well. Because some of the classrooms that I've been witness to or been a teacher of, there was so many things going off at the same time that it didn't matter if that kid was in the classroom all day. There was a lot of the time that instruction was not happening because of issues they couldn't deal with within the services we could provide that are paid by our district or whatever district I was in. And it keeps getting more, the number of situations is increasing and it's more frequent in the days compared to when I started teaching 20 years ago or when anybody, I'm experienced because I know Ann works in buildings and she must see these things, and Phil's been in the business for a long time. I'm not sure other experiences other people have with being in schools right now compared to 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. It's a different world now, and I have kids that I work with, when I talk to their service providers, say, it's not that kid who probably had the issue, it's whatever happened in their classroom all day long, and that's why they behaved that way in your room, because they saw these things going on. So I just, that's my take from a different perspective.
It's also a huge issue at the state right now. The biggest educational bill is called the Health, Emotional Health and Social Safety. So there's a huge emphasis on it, realizing that kids that are unhappy cannot learn. And like you said, Tracy, they're taking away from, you know, from the other children's out there. So I think I support it as a good way to reach some of the kids who maybe don't have an IEP or a 504 plan that get those services that are defined. The other thing is now sometimes, I was at a meeting Friday morning talking about this, and then I went and volunteered in Willimantic. They had to shut down the hall while a child was being moved. So you couldn't go to the bathroom, nobody could leave the classrooms. And, you know, some classrooms, the whole class is leaving, so the child can stay in the classroom. So I think this is one way we can address some of these issues.
And there's a lot of talk in professional development about social emotional learning, which I think this kind of goes along with.
Are we allowed to ask the teachers how they feel about students leaving to do something like this? Or, I don't know, Herb as our chair, we have teachers with us tonight. Are we allowed to ask the teachers how they feel about students leaving for something like this?
No, the board is, it is most certainly.
Can you find out, Phil, sometime?
I think we need to make a decision on this sooner rather than later. I don't want to come back and have more input on this multiple times, but I think that we can, you've been a teacher, other people have been in schools, you were a teacher, so we've been in schools, we have a sense of how schools work. I don't think that we're going to get different information.
Okay, I just respect, I think you made a good point by, you know, whether it's disruptive to
And
teachers or
I
not.
think that a child is losing 30 minutes a day, once a week. That's a lot. The other thing, and this I'm a little iffy on, I will tell you that I did look at our regulations. I found them to be potentially conflicting with each other.
What was you talking about?
When I looked at regulation 1330 about community relations and use of school facilities, I don't think that we're allowed to authorize them to use our building. They're not a nonprofit group, and it's not a non-commercial purpose. This is a business. They run this business all over the state of Connecticut, and they get paid through the insurance company. They're not doing it for free. However they work it out, sliding scale or whatever the insurance company pays. But I'm looking at it and it says, talks about use, and to me this is a for-profit group, and they could easily open up a mental health service, dental office, doctor office, someplace else because they've done it. And, you know, use of school premises for non-school activities is not permitted during school hours. This is not a school activity, and this does not take away from the services that we have to provide, according to what was said earlier, for somebody who has a special education program or is required for counseling. So I think, in addition to thinking that they should set up location, if they feel Wellington has enough people, someplace like Phelps Plaza, which is a central location, that's had doctor's offices before. And they may have more hours. Families could have a better sense of if their student is being matched to the right healthcare provider. And it wouldn't be in conflict with these other things.
I also went on their website and looked at all of the pages and looked in great detail. I saw that they started at the McDonough School in Middletown, so I called an acquaintance of mine who has both worked in that school and her children have gone through that school. She's lived in Middletown most of her life. And she had nothing but glowing things to say about the impact it's had on the school. In part because there were children who would not have otherwise received services. Not that their parents didn't want their children to receive services, but they just couldn't make it happen, couldn't get to the appointments, couldn't find an open slot, couldn't make all of the pieces lined up. And she felt that it allowed kids who otherwise might not have been able to get services at all to access services to be more successful in school. And she thought that it made the school function better. They really became part of the school community and were able to adjust their time. They went to a lot of school events and talked to parents at events. They weren't just a 9 to 5 or a 7 to 3 where they just, stopped and turned off. That they worked beyond the regular hours so that they could interact with the school community and with parents. I also believe they are a nonprofit. Just because they have Inc. after their name does not mean that they are for-profit. So because they are a nonprofit, that's how they can access those 12 state school-based grants. They couldn't get them if they were a for-profit.
Well, she was telling us she wasn't going to get a grant for this.
Right, but they are, as an organization, they are a nonprofit organization. Their model, the reason the model works is because they have donated locations. They don't have to take a copay because they don't have to pay for space. If they had to pay for space, they'd have to take copays to make the model work in terms of spaces. So part of the entire way they've made the model put together is to have donated space in a school building, and then they don't have to have that additional overhead cost of having to pay rent. So I don't think that some of your assumptions are correct in terms of their for-profit versus nonprofit status. And I don't think your assumption is correct that they should just open an office, because they can't open an office in a place. Let me finish, please. They can't open an office in a place where they're not going to be booked full day with everybody who's going to pay the full copay. That's the model. You have to be booked full time and collecting those copays in order to make, and probably more than just that time, in order to make the rent on top of what you're collecting from insurance. So their model works because it's in donated space. So I think that some of the assumptions that you have going into this may be misinformed.
Well, they do it in 15 towns.
Right.
Where they have their own standalone location.
Yeah, all the spaces
In
are donated.
But do we know that they are paying for those locations?
They'd have to be.
They don't have to be. They don't
Well,
have to be.
they're not in schools.
Right, but that doesn't mean they're paying for that space. You don't know that that is paid space.
They didn't have their financial information online. I could only go by this.
I don't think they're in blue either. I'm not sure if that's right.
It said, the dark blue circle says towns with CHC locations. Then the circles are towns with CHC mobile services. And if you look at the color index, Stafford Springs has the mobile dental. And they have the school-based health services. So I printed this off within the last, since you sent out the email.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that a different map than we have in our packet?
There's one map that was in the PowerPoint slides that's on page 5. Right.
It's slightly different because this looks like it just has the school-based health care on it. Because the ones that are the circles with nothing, the little green circles, are blue dots on here.
Actually, you know what? The one that's on the slide, every town that they're in has a blue dot. So
Yeah,
blue dot is a town that receives some services, so it must be different than the map.
It's a different map.
Okay.
But the people from Willington are using their services somewhere.
It means that at least one person in Willington has used their services in one
using their
place.
services somewhere.
Right.
I think the difference though, Donna, is that this is something that we have noticed as a district, as schools, that we need support with. We don't have enough support for. That's why we went searching for this. So it's not that.
Mental health is incredibly important. So I
Sure.
don't want
I agree.
to give the impression that I think their services are unneeded.
Yep.
All right, or I should say that mental health services are unneeded.
Yep.
Because they are. But you need to look, a piece of it is looking at the big picture. If a child has a need on vacation or over the summer, and things come up, you know, and it could be something, they're traumatized by a death in the family, or a pet dies, or life. I mean, it doesn't have to be a family annihilation kind of hardship, all right? But things happen. And one of the things is continuity of care. And if our students, once they hit 8th grade, they will not have continuity of care. And you're dealing with picking from a couple people that they send, which may not be the right match for the student. But if good mental health care is important to your family, you will jump through the hoops. Which is why I said if they opened up a place in WIllington that was close by, they can provide the same services. And I think parents would be more involved and more aware, and that the student would get the better care, and they're not going to be missing out on class time and instruction, and the teachers aren't going to have to be doing juggling act. And how do you tell one of the kids that they're not allowed to get mental health care because, you know, there's this lab, or they're not going to be able to see the person once a week over the summer? And how do you determine, I mean, it sounded like they could add staff easily. My question is, if it's that easy to add staff, why aren't there people out providing those services in the community? So if they have a good resource of staff that stay with them and they have access to hire on more people, then they should open up a place in town, and the need will be, you know, they'll meet the needs of the people that want to use their services.
Okay. Stacy?
I was just going to say, I understand where you're coming from, but I also feel like in light of all of the problems that are happening with school violence, this is a service we can provide in a school to be proactive against those kinds of things happening in communities, in our community.
Michelle?
I was going to say, I think that we're looking, the way you described it was comparing the types of services that children should have a choice of providers that fit their need, that are able to work with their parent. And what this is providing, and you feel like it's not measuring up to what you feel the measure should be. And I would argue that many of the kids who we would be servicing aren't going to be getting any services. So compared to no services any time during the school year, having 2 months off over the summer, or having to possibly change providers and not having perfect continuity of care over the long run is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the lack of services and the lack of any mental health services provided to that student. And I think that that's really the problem we're looking at. If a child is in a place where they have a relationship, or they have private insurance and they're able to provide something that's on their schedule, and they want to find somebody that's the better fit for their child, great. They don't have to use these services. But obviously there's a big need, or you wouldn't have gone looking for it. And those are the kids who are getting nothing. And if we turn this down, we're doing a horrible disservice to those children who have nothing in that way. So I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional about it.
Are we ready to act on this, or?
We don't even have a motion on it.
We don't have a motion on the floor.
Do you want to hear from the Pupil Services Director? She's administrator.
How's the board feel about that?
I would like to.
Okay, I guess it's all right.
School-based health centers have been in existence for many, many years in public education. This agency is not the only agency that provides school-based health center services. Generations Healthcare, Willimantic does. Department of Public Health has a school-based health center grant. I started my career in education through a school-based health center grant as a school social worker, or as a social worker. So there's a lot of different, so this is not an agency that's just looking to build their agency. We had that same question and concern that you had about summer services, and she didn't talk as much, she didn't really extend that conversation as much tonight. But one thing they did say was that they do provide that minimum amount of service, but if they have specific students that they're working with who really need those services, they can extend those services. They will work with that family. If that family could get out to one of their other offices, they could do that. If they needed to have the clinician here in our district, they could do that too. So it's really very tailored to the student's needs. And in regards to transitioning services, I think we're going to see that that school-based health centers are going to be coming into the districts that we are sending to, our surrounding districts more and more. I'm hearing from other pupil services directors that they are looking for the same thing we're looking for because there's such a need. And also in regards to the thought about missing that 30 minutes of time, we have kids who are missing half days or full days because they are, trying to access services. So school-based health centers were really developed to try to eliminate the time that students are missing from school and to try to expand the collaboration between the community-based agencies and the public school agencies. So.
Thank you.
Can I make a motion?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I move that the Willington Public Schools enter into a contract with community health centers to establish school-based health services. Specifically for behavioral health services in both center and home middle school.
Second. Any further discussion relative to the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's 3 and 3. The motion is defeated. And we move on to the next item of business, which are committees. Most of you have a copy of the committees. Any questions regarding committees that have been signed? If not, that's just for your information. First to speak.
You have to vote on this committee.
You want to vote on the committee selections? Okay. All those in favor of the committees as presented, signify by, I need a motion.
I move that we approve the Willington Board of Education Committee members.
I second it.
It's moved and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Nay? All those in favor? Aye. Abstentions? None. Unanimous. Okay. Present to speak. Yes.
Michelle Shine. I just want to say that I'm very disappointed that the last motion did not pass. It is not what is best for our students and what they currently need in our school. There's so many kids that do not have the access to it that need it, and it's not necessarily our special education population who are getting services. It is the other students in the school who could greatly benefit from this. And that is just a great disservice to so many kids because you're worried about one possible child that can't make a connection with a counselor. And if that one possible child can't make a connection, they have the opportunity to go elsewhere. Not all of our students have that. So I'm very disappointed in that last motion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Fred Webster. To piggyback on Michelle's comment, I agree through my many years in the classroom, I've had many children that would have benefited from such services who are not emotionally ready to learn the curriculum that my job puts in front of them. And if they're not ready emotionally to access that learning, they're not going to access it. And I think that providing those services with that for them, if it's a half an hour out of my classroom, it's a half an hour well spent that they will learn to be emotionally regulated and ready to learn the curriculum that comes their way from me.
Moving on to board comments. Well, I'll set it off. The presentations this evening were excellent. They did a nice job. We're really quite proud of them. And they really did a nice job. Okay. Just remind you, there's a town meeting tomorrow if you want to attend it. Also, the staff member who retired, Wilmer, how many years did you give? 34 years? We'll have to set up a special meeting for her. Any comments from anyone else? Say something.
Her name's Tracy.
Yeah, it's Tracy. And I'm very disappointed in two facts around the same vote. I'm disappointed first that we didn't hear from our teachers first, because I'm speaking as a teacher, but I'm as a board member right now, but we had teachers sitting in the room who could have given us advice that maybe we could have listened to their advice as well as the professionals and who are telling us we need this, yet we couldn't give it a chance for 1 year, because working in buildings with these kids, your heart would break and you would say yes in a second if you could see it for half an hour of a day to know what is going on in our buildings that you're not seeing because you're not visiting the buildings to see them. And maybe when you go you will see some things, I hope not, but it's really disappointing that we didn't listen to them and that we didn't listen to the professionals who were giving us advice. I'm very disappointed in the vote that just happened a few minutes ago, and that now that opportunity is gone for and could cause issues for kids in the future.
Michelle?
I'm more disappointed in this vote that we just had than anything that has happened on this board in 8.5 years of service, and that includes all of the budget votes that I've lost over that time. I'm more upset than I can even describe to you. It's because it's such a no-brainer. It costs us nothing. And I would beg you to reconsider. The people who voted against it, we can reconsider if any one of you brings it to the table at a future meeting. The people who voted for it do not have that option. I beg you to talk to teachers and administrators and learn more about it, because I think a disservice to our students was done here today. That's all I have to say.
Yes, I'd like to say something bright. I wanted to say that visit of those children in the beginning, all children from Central School, it was like a really sweet event. And I really appreciate all the parents who brought them here for us, so they could perform and they could show their program. I think they are doing such a great job, and principal was involved in such a beautiful way. So I wanted to say thank you to the principal, all teachers who were involved in those programs, and to the parents who are constantly helping. Okay, thank you.
The programs that you just saw, and I'm going to cry. The programs you just saw were an attempt to build a school climate where children could feel successful in those 4 areas: communication, collaboration, creative thinking, and compassion. What we're talking about tonight is compassion. And there's some kids in the school that don't have that opportunity in their lives. And we have a chance for free, it doesn't cost anything, that we can give them a half hour to talk to somebody a week. So I too hope, maybe we could bring it up another week when we have our full quorum. We don't have our full quorum here tonight. So is it possible to bring it up another night when we have our quorum? Well, we don't have our full board here tonight. So I was really disappointed with that. And on a much more positive note, I want to wish Willa good luck. Willa had my oldest daughter in pre-K. She had my second daughter in kindergarten. She had Angelina, and she now has Kaden. So I really want to thank Willow and wish her a wonderful retirement. So. And I also enjoy going to Bryn's class to read across America. So thank you for that opportunity.
I thought the kids that came for the presentation did an amazing job. And it was good to see how they felt and the positive things that they brought to the school. I thought it was insightful that they wrote to the board but also do something.
Okay, thank you. Okay. No further business to come before the board. I move that we adjourn.